I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
Hey guys, what's going on? Happy Thursday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sab's podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you're new, I want to let you know that Sab's podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and every other Sunday. I want to give a shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, guys. Long time no see. We have quite a bit to discuss tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I hope my lighting is okay. One of my bulbs was like, it's a 3-light bulb and one of them went out, but I hope I look all right for you. Anywho, we have so much to discuss, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, I do want to give a shout out to the chat. Let's do the damn thing. Shout out to Nick says, opinion on Massachusetts ballot questions. Yeah, we're actually going to dive into Massachusetts tonight, Nick. So you will get to hear all of that, man. Greetings, Miguel says, peace. Shout out to Max says, more than 1 million early votes cast in the U.S. so far. Interesting. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize so many people have already voted early. Like, yeah. Thank you, David. Sabby, did you hear about how now they're giving the victims of the hurricane $750 more money for Ukraine instead of the people? It's infuriating. Yes. So actually, JB and I covered that earlier today on Revolutionary Blackout Network. That was the story we focused on, was the hurricane victims and the little bit of money that they're giving them. It's absolutely ridiculous. But again, it's not surprising. What's going on, CBC voters? Says, happy Thursday, Sabby Sabs. Greetings, Jorge says, I watch Sabby more than regular TV these days. That's interesting. Well, welcome, Jorge. Greetings, BMC3. Fuji's family business taking place on Blue Hill Avenue. The Fugees? Like the band, like the group, the Fugees? Interesting. I'll have to look into that. Shout out to John says, say it ain't so, Joe. A repeat of 2016 Donald Trump elected president. I don't know, man. Professor Alan Lichtman predicted that Kamala Harris is going to win. Either way, I think we're screwed, to be honest with you. I will be supporting Jill Stein. I advocate for people to support third parties and try to move away from this corrupt duopoly that we have. Shout out to Lawrence says, free Palestine. Shout out to my comrade JB says, hello, everyone. I hope you are all doing well and having a spectacular Thursday. Yeah, what's up, JB? Water your plants. Water yourselves. Forehead kisses to all y'all. JB loves you. Thank you so much, JB. Adonia says, hey, Sabby and Sabby fam, on my way to watch the show on a bigger screen with friends. Interesting. I wonder how many people watch this show on their television screen and how many of you watch in the YouTube app on your phone. Curious about that. Shout out to, I jumped ahead here somehow. Shout out to Bill says, ready to doobie it up. Greetings, Hannah says, sup. Shout out to Lee Ball says, kind of hoping Lowkey is DL2. Totally would. He's damn fine. Lee, what is up, Lee? Shout out to Huckleberry Ninja. Keep your hands clean. Vote green. Jill Stein 2024. Shout out to Maria says, Lowkey probably will never be invited by Pierce again. I was thinking the same thing when I saw that interview. Oh my God. Lowkey revealed all the things. Shout out to SF says, the port strike just ended. Suspended. That happened quickly, huh? That's good for everybody. I guess I hope they got what they wanted in the process. I hope they didn't just end the strike just because they got a lot of pressure from people. Just saying. Shout out to New York Varsity says shooby dooby doo. Greetings Lolo says hey Sabby. Hey Lolo. Greetings Shaz Monica says hi guys. Shout out to All One Same is dancing over there. Dancing. Shout out to Chrome says Sabby. Peace and love. Greetings, ACAB says hello, everyone, and also says hello to Miguel. Shout out to Steve says hello, everybody. Greetings, Notori sends love. Shout out to Vijaya says hi, Sabby. Greetings, New Sheep says let's get it started in here, and that is what we are about to do. Yeah. How about you go ahead and start us off right and smash that like button, folks. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. And welcome all. So much to discuss. Let's go ahead and give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys for holding the fort and the lights around me. I have to figure out the other light bulb situation, but we'll get it figured out. We'll get it figured out. Either way, tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, nope. Sorry. Whoopsie. Patrons, this is the thing about being live, right? If I mess up, you see it. All right. All right. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories, fam. Ultimate. They're also Sabinators. Don't forget about those Sabsters. They're doing the damn thing. There's also Sabbies. I like to call them Sabby snacks. Sabby snacks. Kudos, Sabby snacks. And of course, they're also members. Thank you guys so much for your support. Really do appreciate you. And I want to give a special shout out to new Sabby patrons. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Aaron Hubbard and Sophie Chester Glenn. Thank you and welcome. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen. They're on the ticker for the newbies. I bet you new people probably, like, if the first time they're watching the show, they're probably like, who are these people at the bottom of the screen? Especially like if they never saw like a live stream, and if they're just watching the clips, they're probably like, who are these people at the bottom of the screen? All right. We have so much to discuss, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go ahead and get into it. I do not want to keep you waiting because tonight's stories are juicy up in this piece. Let's go ahead and share that beautiful thumbnail, ladies and gentlemen. Doobie doobie doo. Tonight, we are discussing Lowkey debates Pierce. Lowkey is the guy in the blue square there, right over Pierce's shoulder, kind of peeking over his shoulder there. He's a rapper and an activist, and he has some things to say to Pierce. I bet you this is probably like one of my most favorite appearances on the Piers Morgan show was this one with Lowkey. So we're going to get into that. Lowkey is there to dismantle quite a bit of information that Pierce is throwing his way about Israel and Gaza. So we'll get into that. We're also going to discuss Ta-Nehisi Coates calls out Israel. Now, if you have not seen his appearance recently on CBS Morning, Ta-Nehisi Coates, he's an activist, he's an author. A lot of people know him because of his work with Black Panther as well. He has written a new book called The Message, and apparently the commentators on CBS this morning were not too happy about what he had to say about the state of Israel. We'll get into all of that because he really checks them, right? He really does. We're also going to discuss Kamala and Jill Stein Muslim vote. There is another poll that was just released, and I noticed something about this poll is from the Arab American Institute, and people are taking this poll and they're trying to make it seem like it's something that it's not. And we really need to get people to think more broadly, and we need people to understand that Arab American doesn't necessarily mean that you are Muslim, that you are practicing Islam. So we're going to get into that, and I'm going to show you the Muslim poll because there's a Muslim voter poll and there's an Arab American poll. So we'll dive into that, but I'm going to show you how some people are trying to manufacture consent. We're also going to discuss, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're ready for some entertainment tonight. Byron Donalds shouting match on CNN. It was quite a conversation. And I put the picture of Byron Donalds up here where he has a pretty angry look on his face because it was almost like you're watching this discussion. You feel that he's going to have that type of expression on his face. And you guys know, I've talked about Byron Donalds on the show before. I think this guy's a total hack. His previous wife, I don't know if people have heard about this, but his first wife has actually exposed that he was never into politics. He was not a Republican. It seems like he's one of those people that was kind of manufactured, or he just kind of jumps on what seems to be trending at that time. He was also spoke out heavily against reparations because he said he wouldn't get it because he's not a Black American, meaning he's not an American descendant of slavery. Byron all over the place. So we're going to get into that conversation, though, because I'm going to show you how both of them are wrong. And ladies and gentlemen, we will discuss the Massachusetts ballot measures for 2024. My state here of Massachusetts only has four questions, and you'll understand why when we get into the type of initiatives that you can run here in Massachusetts. So for my state, we don't have 14 questions like California did or like Arizona did that we covered on the show. It's a little bit harder to get those questions on the ballot here in Massachusetts. So that's why we only have like 4 or 5 sometimes. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, so let's go ahead to these comments here and we'll go ahead and dive in. Thank you for the super chat, La Calma. Jill is the one. Thank you for this as well, La Calma. Kamala is fakety fake. And thank you, Black in the Empire. Sabby, I heard of you. What's up, Black in the Empire? I met Black in the Empire in person. He does have a real name, but I met him in person at anti-war rally in DC. So Black in the Empire, I hope you're doing better because I saw your message on Twitter. So I hope you're doing a lot better now. So let's dive in. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, my God. So once again, Byron Donalds was invited back onto CNN. And again, it's Abby Phillips' show on CNN. And they had a very heated discussion about policing and crime. I want to go ahead and let's bring in this clip here, ladies and gentlemen. Grab some popcorn, right? Grab a drink if that's your thing. We have got to talk about this. This is a doozy.
Is he suggesting that cops can do whatever they want for a day and that will actually solve the problem?
No, he's not. And even the clip you just played, what's it, 5 seconds out of, for Donald Trump, an hour speech? I think a lot of times people say, oh, well, he said this. For 5 seconds, yes, he says things that are unscripted. He goes off the cuff. He's not serious. There's no policy behind that. But I think where the American people truly are is they at least want to hear what somebody is thinking full-throated versus Kamala Harris, who is completely scripted, like badly scripted.
I guess I wonder,
and there's nothing coming out of her.
What is the policy then? If it's not that, then what is actually the solution?
He wants to make sure that police are supported so they're upholding the law. In every city in our country, I was in Duane Reade last night here in New York, just trying to get razor blades so I can get a fresh shave for today. I had to press the button for the attendant to come to open up the case just so I can get a pack of razor blades. That's what's going on in every major city of America. Americans are fed up with that kind of stuff. It happens because you do have a dereliction of support for law enforcement in too many cities in America. And so there's a major angst going on amongst the American people. Donald Trump said a comment for 5 seconds. That's not setting policy. That's revealing the angst of the American people.
Donald Trump has a history of saying inflammatory things. It's not just those 5 seconds, Congressman, and you know that. He has a history that goes back from the time when he first ran for office, and he's talked about telling people in his rallies to knock the crap out of him. He had a history, even when I was working here at CNN, he was telling people how CNN is the enemy of the people. And you know what? A guy named Caesar Sayak sent pipe bombs to this building, or not to the other building that CNN used to be in, and tried to kill people. Donald Trump says things that get people hurt. When he talked about liberating Michigan, what happened? Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, they tried to kidnap her. There's a plot to try to kidnap her. Every time he says something that's just 5 seconds, inflammatory statements like that. What happened when we have January 6th? It's because Donald Trump opened his big mouth and wouldn't shut up. And I wish at some point, Congressman, you would at least have the courage to stand up to your dear leader and tell him when he's doing wrong.
Are we going to
Don't just apologize for him.
Okay, let's It's already getting a little heated, but let's go ahead and interject here. So one of the things that I do want to say when he talks about some of the things that Donald Trump says and how that can stir up people, I think that there are those people that support a politician because they support their policies. And then there are those that idolize a politician. And there are some crazies out there, regardless if they're a Kamala fan or a Trump fan. There are some people that idolize a politician so much to the point where they would do anything for them. So some of the instances that he was referring to there, those are those people. Those are those people that are willing to do whatever they can for Donald Trump, even if it's extreme, even if it's breaking the law. Yes, those people do exist. Now, I would say the vast majority of Trump supporters are not willing to do that. If that were the case, you would have seen all of them there for January 6th. If that was the case, you would have seen all of them trying to do these things. So those people that he's speaking about, those are outliers. Those are not the majority. And I think I highly, highly, highly encourage you to speak to people that don't necessarily support the politicians that you support. I hosted the Black voter panel on this show to prove a point that Black voters are not a monolith. I support Jill Stein, but imagine if I only talked to people who supported Jill. Imagine if I was only friends with people that supported Jill. I have family members that don't vote. Most of my family members don't vote. So just think about these things for a second. But what I noticed is, particularly before I had this show, talking to people that did vote for Trump, because I seriously wanted to understand why, because I couldn't figure it out. Once I got out of my bubble and I started to talk to people to ask them why they did what they did, then I started to realize I think that I made statements about these particular voters and I generalized that group, and that wasn't right. The same way that people have generalized, those of us that are on the further left, the Democratic Party is not left, but those of us that are, support like the universal policies and support reparations, the same way people have vilified us, I used to do that same thing. Now, does that mean that I support Donald Trump? No, it doesn't. But what I'm saying is that we have to get out of this mindset where we think that everybody who supports Donald Trump is racist, or everybody that supports Donald Trump is ready to do a January 6th. That's actually not true. But you don't know that if you only watch liberal media criticize Trump supporters, or you only watch Fox News criticize Kamala supporters, and you don't get out of your bubble and talk to those people for yourself. You really don't know. And they want to keep you in that bubble, right? So I don't approve of those things that Donald Trump did. And in fact, when it happened, I spoke out against those things. I didn't have a show at that time, but I heavily spoke out against it on social media. The problem that I run into in particular is they don't hold Joe Biden's feet to that same fire about some of the things that he said. When Joe Biden made that comment to Charlemagne the God and said, well, if you got to figure out if you want to vote for me or Trump, then you're not Black. Joe Biden should have received much, much more harsher criticism from not just Fox News, but all corporate media should have held his feet to the fire. And they didn't. The most criticism I saw was on independent media. So this is another example. Like I said, these networks, they back the candidates that their network supports. So MSNBC and CNN, they support the Democratic Party. So they are always going to be there to defend the Democrat candidates. Fox News supports the Republican Party. So they're always going to be there to defend Donald Trump or whoever the next Republican candidate is going to be. If we don't get outside of these corporate media bubbles, I think you guys are missing out on a lot of information that would probably surprise you. And you would be surprised to hear some of the people that voted for Obama and then turned around and voted for Donald Trump. Were those people racist too? Think about that.
About the rhetoric
Don't just apologize for him.
Are we going to talk about the rhetoric directed at Donald Trump? Because we do realize that he's been trying to kill.
Are you going to continue to try not to answer the question? So you're not going to answer what I just said.
Hang on one second. Let's talk about that. Let's actually talk about rhetoric, because here's what Trump supporters have been saying.
People hear this violent, dangerous rhetoric, and we're going to have a copycat. is coming. And it's just unfortunate. Somebody's going to get killed.
I'd say that's pretty strong evidence that the left needs to tone down the rhetoric and needs to cut this crap out. Somebody's going to get hurt by it.
It works when we see the liberal elite literally trying to take out a political opponent. Now, do they cause it? Absolutely, they contribute to it. They're complicit with it because of their words.
So according to those gentlemen there, saying that Trump is a threat to democracy is violent rhetoric, but Trump saying, let's just have one really violent day. That is not violent rhetoric?
No, he didn't say one violent day. That's not even
liter-
what he said. But let's be honest about what he actually said.
Can we
Play it again.
Trump
Play it again because he didn't even say that. But go ahead.
Can we play it again?
I want to hear it.
I think they had the wrong clip.
All these stores go out of business, right? They don't pay rent. The city doesn't have it's a chain of events that's so bad. One rough hour, and I mean real rough, the word will get out and it will end immediately. End immediately. You know?
How is that not violent rhetoric?
We have to acknowledge the reality going on in every city in America.
Not answering the
Crime
question.
is mass.
Not answering the question.
That is answering the question
How
because
is
the reality in America, hold on, Keith, the reality in America is that crime is massively up.
Crime is not massively
Yes,
up.
it
That's
is.
a
You
lie.
can bang the table
Crime-
all you want, but
You're
that's not
lying,
true,
Congressman.
Keith.
You're lying.
We already know that there are
the
cities.
FBI just released data this week that crime is going down.
We already know that.
Oh my God! Why do you, Abby? Why do you let this man lie on your national television?
Okay, so this is where it also gets heated again, right? Because they're complaining about crime and whether it's up or not. They're actually going to pull up the graph, but when they analyze this graph, there are certain things that they don't tell you that I'm going to tell you, which I think you'll need to hear, because it was kind of weird to me how they only focused on 2 points on that graph instead of focusing on the entire graph as a whole. But this argument, whether or not crime is up, crime is down, it depends on what crimes you're looking at. I think when they say crime is going down, they're referring to violent crime, right? So when people say Byron saying crime is going up, he's probably talking about all crime. They're saying crime is going down. They're talking about violent crime. So it depends. And there's been different reports to go along with that. But what was weird to me, it almost kind of seemed like what the gentleman on the other side of the table, it almost kind of seemed like to me what he was trying to allude to is the thing about, well, crime is going down because Donald Trump is not in office, and that crime was up because he was in office and because of his rhetoric. And I don't think that's necessarily true. And I'm going to explain that in just a second when they pull up this graph.
I'm telling you that
This
exact
is not right.
You may not
You're a
want.
liar,
You may not.
Congressman.
No, I'm
You're
not.
lying.
Because you're lying to the American
Keith,
people
if
now.
you would let
And
me
so I want to be
talk,
respectful of what you're trying to say.
Hang on a second.
Go
If
ahead.
you would just let me
Go ahead.
talk, I will explain exactly what you want me to explain. We have the data. The FBI literally put out data today showing that crime is down this year for the first 6 months of the year. But look at the trend line. Okay, crime is down in all these different categories. And then there is a trend line that shows that crime is going down.
Okay, so let's pause here for a second, guys. This is the new FBI crime stats. So this is violent crime. So murders, sexual assault, robberies, aggravated assault, property crime. This is more so like violent crime. So yes, violent crime is going down. In fact, I covered this a couple of months ago, I believe, when people were still saying that crime was, surging. I'm like, what type of crime are you referring to? So they're referring to the violent crimes here.
So why do you continue to say that?
I do think, though, in some place.
I'll let you get in, but I do want the congressman to answer that question.
Please.
If you look at crime rates in the United States since the pandemic to this current period in time, crime is up.
Okay,
over the years, crime is up. Violent crime is up. I'm looking right now.
Okay, let's go through this chart together as a team. Can we do that, guys, as a team? All right. Byron Donalds has said since the pandemic, crime is up. So if we look at the graph here, we can see 2020 pandemic, and he said since the pandemic, crime is up. Technically, what he said is true. Since the pandemic, crime is up. What he omits is that since in between period, he does leave this out. There was a high of 1.3 million for violent crime in 2020. Now, why is that important? That makes sense because That was the height of the pandemic. So it makes sense that violent crime would have been pretty high during that time. Actually, almost one of the highest on this graph if we're looking at the years. That makes sense. What he omits is that after that, there was a sharp decline right here going into 2021, sharp decline of violent crime. So he omits this piece of information, but then he jumps in to tell you that violent crime increased. And he's right. Right here, it has increased. Joe Biden came into office 2020, and you see a sharp increase of crime. To the other gentleman's point, he said violent crime is down. As you can see here, going over towards 2023, of course, they don't have it for 2024 yet because they do this yearly. But you can see it is decreasing. So it is going down. However, so both of them were kind of, all over the place. But I think what they're leaving out is what happened prior to that, because the crime is not just about Donald Trump and the Biden administration. If we look at this graph, and this is where I feel like Abby Phillips should have done this as the commentator, she should be telling you what I'm telling you right now. If you look at this graph, it goes back to 2015. At that point in time, violent crime was at 1.2 million. That is Barack Obama's administration. 1.2 million is still high. So when you see this sharp drop here in 2021, just a little bit below 1 million, even during 2015, during Obama's administration, the crime was not low. And as you'll notice over time, from 2015, you'll notice how violent crime continues to increase. Again, this is still during the Obama administration. Donald Trump didn't take office until 2017 is when he took office. He ran in 2016. So as you'll see, the violent crime was increasing under the Obama administration as well. You see it going up here, all the way up here. Donald Trump takes office in 2017, and it's just a little bit below 1.3 million right here. And then you'll see there's a little bit of a decrease during Trump's presidency, and then it starts to go back up again a little bit above 1.3 million right there, 2020, the height of the pandemic, which makes sense if you're thinking about what's going on. Now, to the point that the gentleman was making across the table from Byron Donalds, if he's trying to allude to the fact that violent crime was up only under Trump's administration or because of Donald Trump's rhetoric, then what is his excuse for the reason why violent crime was significantly high during the Obama administration? So I think what they're leaving out is poverty. They're leaving out the connection between poverty and crime. And I've said this before, if you look at the numbers, it's roughly about 80% of all crimes are linked to poverty. So they're not talking about that. And this is why I think it was weird to me. They put this up here, but then they were only like, oh, look, it went down. Oh, look, it went up. And they ignored everything on this side of the graph. What that tells you, ladies and gentlemen, is that whether it was under a Democrat presidency or Republican presidency, since 2015, with the exception of this sharp decline right here, 2020 about to go into 2021, violent crime has been high since 2015. That's under Democrats and that's under Republicans. Let's get back to the cat fight.
Okay, crime is on its way down. It has not returned to pre-pandemic levels yet, but it is trending down. That is a fact.
I'm looking at your chart right now. 2021 is when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris came into office. Look at that spike up in violent crime. Well, Donald Trump.
Do you see where it went after 2021?
Abby, this is important. This is important. But
I don't understand.
This is really important.
Crime is going down. And
put the chart back up. Put the chart back up.
Put it back up. Crime.
Look at where it's going. 2021, which is when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris came into office in 2021.
Okay.
The trend line is up for violent crime in the United States of America.
And you know what?
That is an empirical.
So again, this is what happens with the partisan ideology, right? So obviously Byron Donalds is going to defend his party. And obviously Abby Phillips and dude across from the table is going to defend their party. And when you do that, you overlook everything else in between. And they are overlooking how the violent crime rate was high under the Obama administration as well. They are overlooking this sharp decline right here from 2020 to 2021. There was a sharp decline of violent crime. They're overlooking that. They're overlooking the connection between crime and poverty. So what was interesting to me, and this is why I said before, like, people have a tendency to defend their party. People really do. And they missed everything that I just told you and showed you about this graph that they put up on the screen. And Abby Phillips' role is not to tell you what I just told you. Her role working at CNN is to make sure that she does defend the Democratic Party and to make sure that someone like Trump, never resumes the White House again. So this is why people have such a big frustration with corporate media, because they're not telling people the full story. They're just putting it, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, they've all just basically just become defenders for their political party. That's it. That's it. Let me let them finish.
Fact.
I'm not going to sit here and let
chart.
this
It's not even
man-
mine. I just saw it for the first time.
all night on
I just saw the
television.
chart.
I'm not going to sit here and let him lie on
But I want to.
No. Wait 1 second, because we
This is
have
silly.
to hold on.
It's not silly when people.
We have
when
to,
stores,
Congressman,
and I'm sorry.
just give
And
me
I'm sorry,
1 second,
Abby.
please.
Go ahead. Of course.
We have to
Absolutely.
deal in facts here.
Thank you.
Okay, it's clear as day. The FBI put out statistics for the first half of this year.
Yeah.
The trend lines are going down in all of those different categories: murders, rapes, robberies, property crime, aggravated assaults. For 2023, the trend line is going down. If you don't believe the FBI, independent people who look at these numbers say the same thing. There was a spike in crime during the pandemic. That is true. Nobody's disputing that. But the reality is that crime is going down. You don't have to twist the facts to make the case that people feel unsafe. Just say people feel unsafe.
I'm not even twisting the facts. You put up a chart. I just looked at the chart myself. The bottom line was from 2021. Well, what happened in 2021? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris came into office. This is when Democrat politicians were all the rage for defund the police.
This had nothing to do with.
So again, they're wrong. So once again, Byron Donalds is debating this from a partisan perspective. So he says that crime went up because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were all about defund the police. First of all, Joe Biden never supported defund the police, and neither did Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is literally a freaking cop. I don't know why they continue to spread these lies. It is what it is. The woman's a freaking cop, okay? She loves to lock people up. So stop it with that, Byron. I don't like Kamala, but that's just ridiculous. The reason why, and we'll go back to the chart again, since they don't seem to understand their own chart that they put up on the screen. Let me see if I can bring this back up here. Let's get back to that graph. Because I think right here. So pay attention, folks. This sharp decline, once again, 2020, height of the pandemic, sharp decline here. This is when people were locked down. So the sharp decline, that makes sense. People were locked down. I was in a state that was locked down. We were staying our ass at home. So in 2021, when he says, oh, well, they came in and said defund the police, and that's when the crime would. No, that was when a lot of the states started to lift the lockdowns. That is why it started to go back up again, which is what it was before, prior to the lockdowns. Does everybody understand that? Now, why can't they understand that? Why can't they understand what I just showed you? It is common sense that if you're locked down and everybody's inside, of course, you're going to have less crime. But he's not making the case for the fact that once the lockdowns were starting to lift, and that would make sense about 2021, that's when they started to lift it, or at least here, the crime rate increased again. But when you are there to just defend your party, you can overlook something that is just plain as clear as day and common sense because you're just supposed to defend your party. I mean, Abby Phillips doesn't tell you what I just told you either. That's the thing. None of them get this right.
This year,
Yeah.
the numbers, the trend lines are going down in all of those different categories: murders, rapes, robberies, property crime, aggravated assaults. For 2023, the trend line is going down. If you don't believe the FBI, independent people who look at these numbers say the same thing. There was a spike in crime during the pandemic. That is true. Nobody's disputing that. But the reality is that crime is going down. You don't have to twist the facts to make the case that people feel unsafe. Just say people feel unsafe.
I'm not even twisting the facts. You put up a chart. I just looked at the chart myself. The bottom line was from 2021. Well, what happened in 2021? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris came into office. This is when Democrat politicians were all the rage for defund the police.
This had nothing to do with that.
Can I finish my point? Because I'll let you speak. No, but you can't.
You really did not. You monopolized the
because
entire conversation for the most part.
Keith, you yelled across the table, didn't even let me make my point. I'm not lying. I'm telling you the truth. You don't want to hear the truth. That's the problem.
The truth is up there in the
The problem is you don't want to hear the truth.
Let you finish your thought,
All I'm saying is similar.
I don't even know why you have him on the stage tonight.
Similar to inflation, because I'm bringing facts to you.
Because you're lying.
Because similar to inflation, in 2024, the trend lines are coming down slowly, but that ignores the reality of 2021, 2022, 2023. You know what the American people are concerned about, which Donald Trump is speaking to? Massive inflation brought to us by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
True.
It is very
Not
true.
true.
Even Larry Summers said it. You can
Not
interrupt
true.
all you want, but it's the facts. I was in the House. You were not. I know exactly what happened.
I know what you were doing in the House,
But again, I'm going to move on. Hang tight, Keith. I'm going to finish.
Thank you.
You have massive inflation created by Joe Biden and Kamala
Not
Harris.
true.
The same chart you just put up, 2021 through 2023, crime rates going up, and then slowly tapering off in 2024. And then we're supposed to sit here and act like, oh, happy days are here again because the trend lines are going down. The trend lines over the last 4 years are massively up. That's what Donald Trump is speaking to, and that's why the American people have serious issues about what's going on in America.
I will say this, the trend.
So this was just really sad. And this is why people, more people are moving away from corporate media. On Sunday, I'm going to tell you about a couple of people that are making a shift. We're going to talk about the announcement from Anna Kasparian, and we're going to talk about the announcement from Taylor. I forget that woman's name. She works at the Washington Post. We're going to tell you about this shift that's starting to happen in media because, again, like I said before, corporate media, they leave out just important information. And anybody who is not thinking from a partisan lens and is just looking at that graph, all you have to do, and what was weird is they even mentioned the pandemic, but they didn't make the correlation between the lockdowns, people being locked inside, and people walking outside. So that was just really weird to me, but I got to tell you guys, this is how partisanship can rot the brain. It's just one of those things, man. And that was pretty sad. That was pretty sad, man. Oh my God. Did I mean to put that there? Oh, maybe I did. Okay, give me a second. All right, let's go ahead to some of the comments here. Oh my God. I don't know what to say. Thank you, Cloudness. Kamala Harris is a fraud and not black at all. Oh boy. Jimmy, I watch you on my TV on X. Oh, interesting. I didn't know you can watch Twitter on your TV. I have to check that out. Thank you, Natalie. I can vouch for the fact that law enforcement not responding to crime, especially burglaries, is up. Thank you for that. And thank you, Cloudness. They're not reporting migrant crimes either. And it wouldn't be for this year because the reports that they have go through the end of 2023. So keep that in mind as well. Thank you, Jay Tolbert, for the super sticker. And thank you, New York Varsity. On a net scale, Byron is right with the graph that they are incapable of reading. There you go. It's just weird, man. Weird times. Okay. If you haven't had a chance to do so, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and smash that like button. Thank you. And we are going to move into our next story. So this is a doozy, fam. There is a new poll that was released by the Arab American Institute. And I want to show you what these numbers reflect when it comes to the national support and when it comes to the swing state support for Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, and Jill Stein. But first, I want to show you this. You don't want to show this yet? Yeah, I want to show you this first. There was something that was said during the debate that lets you know that the jig is up. And I'm pretty sure that Tim Walz probably didn't mean to say this the way that he said it, but listen to this.
The expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there.
The expansion. The expansion. Everybody heard what he said? So listen to this again.
The expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there.
The expansion. So keep that in mind when we go through the polls, and then we're going to come back to that clip at the end of this segment because I want to tie everything in together. So it started off with Brian Metzger. He shared this information on Twitter. New polling from the Arab American Institute finds Kamala Harris in a dead heat with Donald Trump, 42% to 41% among Arab Americans, while 12% back third-party candidates. However, that's a big improvement from the 17% that Biden registered in the same poll last October. Now, let's go to the second part from Brian. The poll also finds that her support among Arab Americans would soar to 54% if she demanded a ceasefire, 56% if she were to suspend diplomatic support arms and shipment to Israel. So let's go back here. I want people to understand something. There seems to be a misconception among Americans in particular, where a lot of Americans seem to assume that everyone that is Arab American is practicing Islam, or everyone that is Arab American is Muslim. And that's not true. So the information that I think you need to remember when we go into these numbers, because I'm going to show you a little bit more detail than he's showing you, because he only showed you part of those numbers. He didn't show you the other part. You have to remember that when they are polling Arab Americans, they're polling Arab Americans, not necessarily Arab American Muslims. So I'm going to show you this poll, and then I'm going to show you the poll from Muslim voters. But I thought it was interesting the way that he worded that, right? And a lot of people, they see this and they think, oh, that means Kamala's doing really well with Muslim voters. No. This is the Arab American vote. That doesn't mean that everyone that is polled is Muslim. This is why I said you need to look at the Muslim voter poll. So keep that in mind. Arab Americans can be Christian. Remember, there are Palestinian Christians, there are Palestinian Jews. Not everybody that is Arab is Muslim, and you have to understand that. So keep that in mind. We look at the numbers. The 12% here, 12% back third-party candidates. Now, this is a national numbers. That's huge for third parties. That's actually significant. I would argue it's higher, but it's higher when you look at the Muslim voter poll. So let's go into the details here. New poll finds Arab American voters evenly divided in the 2024 presidential election. Evenly divided. But again, this is the Arab American Institute. Remember, this is not a poll just for Muslim voters. And I have to keep saying that because what you have to understand is that there are Black Muslims, right? So keep that in mind. But this is where he got his numbers from. And I want to show you something really quick here. Let's pull this up. It says this part right here, according to the new poll of Arab American voters, it says in the presidential race, former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris are virtually tied at 42% to 41% respectively. This is the press release. So he pulled his information from the press release. What he did not do was look at the details of the poll. So he didn't click on this link here that says Arab American Vote 2024. So I'm going to show you what he didn't show you, because I want people to fully understand this. When you click onto that link, we're going to go down here just a little bit and you'll see. Here's the other set of numbers that he didn't show you. Turning to the presidential race, it says that Donald Trump and Vice President Harris are virtually tied among the Arab American voters, 42% to 41%. However, the part that he left out, looking more closely with those that report that they are likely to vote, Trump leads Harris 46 to 42%. Don't you think that's something that people should have known? You see how people are trying to find ways to manufacture the consent. You see how people are only giving you certain information. So what they're doing is they're not changing the numbers on you. They're giving you the exact numbers that are from the poll, but they're only giving you certain information to make you think that Kamala is doing better than she is. I've seen it happen on the Republican side as well. Only pulling certain information to make it seem like Trump is way ahead or Kamala is way ahead, etc. But you really need to look at the details. And when you look at the details, it proceeds to tell you that among the likely voters, Donald Trump has 46% and Kamala Harris has 42%. So that 42 and 41% that you were told about previously, those aren't likely to vote. The numbers I just gave you, the 46% and the 42%, are those that are likely to vote. That piece of information is important. This is what I was referring to when I said there are certain accounts, and I've noticed this on social media, they're only showing certain pieces of polls or, articles, etc., data that makes it look like Kamala's doing good, or they only show certain parts that make it look like Trump's doing good, when in reality, sometimes it's somewhere in between. And that is, again, to convince the American people it's very, very tight, very, very tight, very, very close. And I told you guys, I don't really believe it is that tight. So this is another way that they can manufacture consent. This is another way that they can make you believe something without showing you the full picture. Now we have to remember again that Arab Americans, what did we say? We have to remember that Arab Americans can also be Christian, could be non-religious. They're not all Muslim. So let's see if we can pull up the CARE poll. Let's go into that one. Because I don't want people to be confused. Now, we're going to look at the CARE poll. Let's bring this up because I want you to see the difference. And this will explain a lot because it's closer than people realize with, not closer than people, is not as close as people think when we break it down between Muslim voters. So again, this is the CARE poll. This is the swing state data shows Muslim voters hold diverse preferences. So now we're gone from Arab American voters to Muslim voters. Do you see the difference? So let me show you what the numbers show now. Because some people are probably like, how is it Donald Trump could have like 46% among Arab Americans? Because some of those Arab American voters are also Christian. So it's important that you look at the Muslim voter poll here from CARE, the CARE survey. So when we look at this, I'm trying to get this X to go away. Okay, there we go. When we look at this information, CARE initial August 25th through 27th survey revealed that 29.4% of American Muslims plan to vote for Kamala Harris of the Democratic Party, virtually tied with Jill Stein of the Green Party. So does everybody see that? Don't you think that's different information from what you saw from the Arab American Institute poll? Right, these are Muslim voters. Let's continue on. At the same time, Donald Trump of the Republican Party garners 11.2% of the vote, and Dr. Cornel West of the People's Party receives 4.2%. Chase Oliver of the Libertarian Party has less than 1% support, with 16.5% of respondents remaining undecided. Now let's look at the battleground states. See if it'll let me highlight it. Oh, maybe it doesn't. Oh, here we go. With the battleground states, Dr. Stein is leading Harris in Arizona by 35%. She's leading her in Michigan by 40% and Wisconsin by 44%. Kamala Harris leads Jill Stein in Georgia by 43% and Pennsylvania by 37%. Trump's highest support is observed in Nevada, 27%, just ahead of Harris, 26%. So what you are seeing here, when you look at the swing states, which is exactly what Butch Ware was trying to explain to people, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona, Jill Stein is ahead of Kamala Harris with Muslim voters. A third-party candidate. And that is because people are not about this genocide. Now, looking even further, and this one I haven't figured out. So if you live in Nevada, let me know. For whatever reason, in Nevada, Donald Trump is ahead of Kamala Harris with Muslim voters. I don't know what's happening there. I don't know. But in the majority of the swing states, Jill Stein is leading with the Muslim vote. That still remains. That is very important. And this is why people have been coming after Jill Stein. So the question remains again, where does this go from here? Where does this go from here? And there's something else I want to show you. I think you might find this interesting too. When we look at gender, ladies and gentlemen, right here, Kamala Harris leads among Muslim male voters with 29%, but Jill Stein holds a stronger position among Muslim women at 34%. So here we have Jill Stein has a stronger percentage among Muslim women than Kamala Harris does. And Kamala Harris is supposedly, winning over a lot of women, right? So how does Jill Stein have more support among the women? Yeah, fam says, wow, that's horrible. Yeah, I was trying to tell people about the numbers. So again, this is not something that they're really talking about on CNN or MSNBC, etc. They're not going into this as much. Now, one second, guys. Sorry, it's a little bit trickier with Eric, not with me. I'm just making sure I'm okay. Now, you have right now Benjamin Netanyahu, who is basically calling for regime change in Iran. This is why when people ask why, this is why. Because Israel has lost their freaking mind. And don't forget what Tim Walz said on the debate stage. They support the expansion of Israel. And now Israel is calling for regime change in Iran. Listen to this.
I speak a lot about the leaders of Iran. Yet at this pivotal moment, I want to address you, the people of Iran. I want to do so directly, without filters, without middlemen. Every day, you see a regime that subjugates you make fiery speeches about defending Lebanon, defending Gaza. Yet every day, that regime plunges our region deeper into darkness and deeper into war. Every day, their puppets are eliminated. Ask Muhammad Deif. Ask Nasrallah. There is nowhere in the Middle East Israel cannot reach. There's nowhere we will not go to protect our people and protect our country. With every passing moment, the regime is bringing you, the noble Persian people, closer to the abyss. The vast majority of Iranians know their regime doesn't care a whit about them. If it did care, if it cared about you, it would stop wasting billions of dollars on futile wars across the Middle East. It would start improving your lives. Imagine if all the vast money the regime wasted on nuclear weapons and foreign wars were invested in your children's education and improving your health care, in building your nation's infrastructure, water, sewage, all the other things that you need.
So you see what's happening here. So this is Benjamin Netanyahu talking about regime change in a way to make it seem like he would free people of Iran. He would free the people of Lebanon by implementing regime change. And we all know that regime change does not work out. And in particular, it definitely has not worked out in the Middle East. This is how they will talk to you, right? This is how he's going to talk to make it seem like I'm trying to help all those people there get away from those terrorists in their country. And that's how they'll talk to you, to make you think, make it sound like he's trying to do something to help them. He's not trying to help those people. He wants those people gone. So this guy is acting. Anytime you hear someone say, a leader say, I want to free up those people, they're calling for regime change. And Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and Donald Trump are all in agreement with it. They all agree with the expansion.
Imagine that. But you know one simple thing. Iran's tyrants don't care about your future, but you do. When Iran is finally free, and that moment will come a lot sooner than people think, everything will be different.
That is regime change. When Iran is free, and he tells you, he warns you, it's coming soon, everything will be different. So you have Benjamin Netanyahu talking about regime change in Iran. And so when people are pointing fingers at those third-party voters saying, how dare you not support Kamala Harris? Are you crazy? You could get Donald Trump. Look at everything that's already happened under Biden and Kamala. Look at everything, the genocide, everything. Right now, Israel is bombing Syria, Gaza, Lebanon, and they have just declared war with Iran. So they're trying to fight four different. It seems like to me there's one common denominator. Yes? No? But our government is pushing for this. Our government supports Israel doing what they're doing. I want to be very clear. Our government supports what Israel is doing. They are not against it. If they were against it, they would not give them weapons. And I want to show you another time. Our government supported what Israel wanted. Now, this goes back to Saddam Hussein. Listen to this.
There is no question whatsoever that Saddam is seeking and is working and is advancing towards the development of nuclear weapons. No question whatsoever. And there is no question that once he acquires it, history shifts immediately. There is no question that he had not given up on his nuclear program, not whatsoever. There is also no question that he was not satisfied with the arsenal of chemical and biological weapons that he had and was trying to perfect them constantly. Saddam is hell-bent on achieving atomic bombs, atomic capabilities as soon as he can.
In this September 2002 congressional hearing, Netanyahu openly called for war on Iraq and insisted that a U.S. military invasion would be hugely beneficial for the entire Middle East.
If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region. And I think that people sitting right next door.
And that was not the case, right? Of course, we found out that he didn't have weapons of mass destruction, but look who was calling for it. Look who was calling for regime change. Look who was pushing it. Does his face look familiar to you? And now he's calling for regime change again, this time in Iran, in other countries. So the reason why some people They want to not support this. They say, no, I do not want to support Donald Trump. I do not want to support Kamala Harris. And it seems like to me, the people who are really angry at Muslim voters who want to support Jill Stein, it seems like to me you're taking your frustration out on the wrong people. It seems like you should be taking your frustration out on Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party for not implementing a real ceasefire, for continuing to give weapons to Israel. You see, once again, people are blaming the wrong people. Just like I saw people getting mad at workers going on strike. Why are you getting mad at the workers? Why aren't you getting mad at the CEOs? Why aren't you getting mad at the billionaires? But we literally have people trying to shame people about voting third party instead of shaming the politicians in office that are continuing to give Israel weapons. So he told you about regime change in Iran. He told you about regime change for Saddam Hussein. He told you all this kind of stuff. And he's fighting all these different countries at the same time. And then you have Tim Walz say this on the debate stage.
The expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States.
Everybody see this? The expansion of Israel is an absolute necessity for the United States. We'll hear it again. I'll let the whole thing play this time.
The expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. Let's keep in mind where this started.
Let's understand how we got here.
October 7th.
On October 7th,
Hamas terrorists
Hamas, a terrorist organization,
massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners.
Slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Women were horribly raped.
Still repeating the lie.
And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself.
Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. The expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. Let's keep in mind where this.
So Tim Walz, I think, slipped up a little bit there when he said the expansion of Israel. I'm pretty sure that's not what he wanted to say or what he was supposed to say. But what that tells you, ladies and gentlemen, is that the U.S. government 100% supports what Israel is doing. They're not against Israel killing people in Gaza. They're not against Israel killing people in Lebanon. They're not against Israel going to war with Iran. In fact, they support everything that Israel is doing, and they want Israel to expand. And I'm sorry, but don't get mad at me. I'm not the one who said it. Tim Walz let the cat out the bag on the debate stage. And I think it went over a lot of people's heads. They may not have been paying attention to it, but he's letting you know they do support it. That's why they're still giving them the weapons. That's why the only reason they called for it and they said that we needed a ceasefire, I told you guys, that was fake. They were acting. They were trying to fool you. The only reason why they did that is because there was massive protests in the street across the world. So they figure, how do we get the protesters to be quiet? We call for the same demand that they're calling for, which is a ceasefire. And that's what they did, but they never actually did the ceasefire. So every time people talk about it, they say, we're working tirelessly. Everybody got the same line. Tim Walz and Kamala Harris changed the number of people that were killed on October 7th. She telling you 1,200, he said 1,400. They're all reading from a script. These people are liars. And then people want to point fingers at those who want to vote third party instead. It is not our fault if Kamala Harris loses. It is the Democratic Party's fault. It is Kamala Harris's fault for lying to the American people. It is not our fault that Kamala Harris has lost the Muslim vote. That is her fault. And people have to remember too, as I've said before, there are also Black Muslims. Now, for those of you who say, but Sabby, what about abortion rights? What about the women? Jill Stein was actually on Breaking Points earlier today. And I want to show you what Jill Stein says about that particular question because it was Sagar who brings it up. Listen to this.
Upset about Israel, but I've got this abortion referendum or whatever on the ballot. If I don't vote to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't get into the office, then I could literally have, an issue I care a lot about suffer. What would you say to somebody like that? You've talked a lot about abortion, but they have to think that way.
For one thing, Democrats could solve that problem right now, and the Biden-Harris administration could set up the abortion clinics on federal land, on military bases, and so on, all around the country. So this problem could be solved, and shame on them for not solving it. And sure, the White House administration might change, but once those abortion clinics are set up on federal land, it will be very hard to take them away. Also, you have the fact that these referendums are passing all over. Let
me just pause it there for a second and I'll come back in. I have to fix that. But the point that I want to bring across here, notice what Jill Stein just told you. Why isn't Kamala Harris telling you that? Why didn't Joe Biden tell you that? Why didn't they tell you that they could set up abortion clinics on federal land right now? I thought they cared about these women. I thought they cared about this. Don't they care about this issue so much? That's why they haven't codified it into law, even though Obama promised that he would and then backed off of it. So essentially, Kamala Harris is doing the same thing that she said Donald Trump was doing. When she said Donald Trump blocked the border bill to further his campaign, we can say the same thing about abortion with the Democratic Party. You guys have never tried to get done what you could get done with abortion, and you're not even trying to put abortion clinics on federal land, which would not be impacted because you want to run on that issue. So Donald Trump wanted to run on the border, and Kamala Harris, you wanted to run on abortion. Explain to me again how these parties are phenomenally different. Tell me. Now we'll go to this other part here. I also want to show you something else that she said on Breaking Points too, because I think that was important. There we go. Because Crystal gets into the spoiler rhetoric, and I do want to bring that part up. So let's bring that up.
That Roe v. Wade was codified, and both Biden and Obama promised during their elections that this would be the first thing that they did, but they managed never to get to it. So, there's a lot of blame to go around here. It's not just Republicans.
So, Dr. Stein, I know you object to the idea of lesser evil voting, but do you, in fact, think that Democrats are the lesser evil of the two parties?
How do you get more evil than conducting genocide? How do you get more evil than attacking peaceful protesters who are simply giving voice to the values of the American people and the values of the world and having your heads cracked in? How do you get more evil than establishing the cop cities? There are some 80 of them that are being built now around the country, and many of them under Democratic municipal administrations like in Atlanta. This is an assault on our basic democratic rights, on our freedom of speech, on basic human rights and international law that's going on. So
do you see Republicans then as a lesser evil?
I don't see a lesser evil. I think we have two greater evils. And
let me pause there for a second. This is the problem, I think, with the duopoly, right? So Crystal said on Piers Morgan a while back that she was going to be voting for Jill Stein. I don't know if that still holds or not. Once Kamala entered the race, she became like a big Kamala stan. She'll still criticize her, but again, she's there to defend the Democratic Party. So when you ask a third party candidate, particularly the Green Party, and you ask them, who do you think is the lesser two evils? If they thought that were the case, they would be with one of those parties. They're in a third party because they realize they're both evil. So this is where Crystal comes in to try to help out the Democratic Party here a little bit. And let me see if I can try to prove that Jill Stein believes that the Republicans are the less evil, right? Why are we arguing about what's lesser evil during a genocide? Why are we even arguing about that? Why are we bargaining? And when you say lesser evil, you yourself are acknowledging that the Democratic Party is also evil. So why are you supporting evil? I don't understand this at all. And some people could have made excuses for it before, like back in the past. But now, like with the genocide, how can you even say, how is that less? What do you mean lesser evil under a genocide? Let me let her finish here.
Our job is to basically stand up and fight for the greater good, which, you know, our very lives are depending on as we stand on the verge of, you know, enlarging and extremely dangerous wars, both, you know, at the border of Ukraine and Russia and as well in the Middle East. And, you know, the U.S. is ginning up, you know, conflict with China as well. We have an extremely aggressive.
Oh, let me come out. I don't know why the VNC it was moving a little slow. So let me try to come back out and come back in. Sorry about that, guys. And then we'll just go back in when it's shorter there. There we go.
Is bought and paid for not just by AIPAC, but also by the war contractors. Both parties, you know, take contributions from PACs, corporate PACs. They work with super PACs. They can take $1 million checks. A single, you know, donor with deep pockets can write a check for $1 million and exert enormous influence. The Greens do not participate in these legalized loopholes for corruption. So, you know, we are, you know, the one national scope party that can actually stand for what the American people desperately, which is squandering half of our congressional budget on the endless war machine. But it's also what we.
Yeah, so we'll pull that out there. I think I have too many tabs open. It happens sometimes, but you guys get the point there, right? Like this whole idea of the lesser of evil during a time that when we have a genocide actually happening is really weird to me. And I remember saying to myself, like, wow, I know it's been crazy out there and I know times have been rough, but I never thought that I would see quote unquote progressives seriously trying to defend, you know, the genocidal behavior, or not really defend the genocidal behavior, but still give excuses as to why you should still support it. And that has been completely disappointing. But I think you get the point there. This is why Muslim voters, this is why Jill Stein is winning over a lot of those Muslim voters, because, I mean, I kind of get where they're coming from. Why should they? Why should they come out and support Kamala Harris after what has happened to their family members in the Middle East? Why should they? Like, this is insane. And the way that I hear some Democrats talk about this as if they have to do it, they owe it to them. And I say to myself, like, that's insane. Let's go to some of the comments here in the chat. Thank you, David. Sabby, most Muslim Americans are ADOS and Africans. Yes, this is true. This is another one. Again, I told people there are also Black Muslims. People don't think about that. Thank you, Roger. Oh, crap. I forgot Eric is not here. Guess what? You forgot, Sab. I will get to it. Thank you, Maria. 80% of Muslims worldwide aren't Arab. Everybody here see this? Thank you, David. Hi, Sabby. I'm so happy. I'm 43. Just had my first child, baby Jamila, 15 days old. Congratulations, David. Thank you for the super sticker, James Starks. Congratulations to David, for real, fam. Thank you, Naima. A few years ago, Israel said he would liberate Africa after liberating the Jewish people, but he really means to colonize the Middle East. Bingo. Anytime you hear them say, I want to free the people, they really mean colonize that land. Thank you, Jay Tolbert. Isn't it high time this country changes its name to the USA, the United States of AIPAC? Just saying. Right? And thank you, Maria. I knew about the Atlanta Cop City, but 80, yes, there are multiple cop cities that are being built across the United States. The Atlanta one, which was the first one, did receive a lot of attention, but there are plenty. Baltimore is another location that they're popping up. Yeah. All right, guys, go ahead and smash that like button. Thank you. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. And we are moving on to our next story about Ta-Nehisi Coates. This is a good one, fam. Yeah. Just want to make sure that's going there. Okay. Based. Ta-Nehisi Coates, author, activist. A lot of people are familiar with him from Black Panther, etc. He's spoken a lot about race relations in the United States. And it seems like the pundits were great and they were happy about him when he was talking about racial issues for Black people in the US. But now Ta-Nehisi Coates has written a new book called The Message, where he is criticizing the state of Israel. And all of a sudden, some of those same people that were applauding him for talking about racial issues for Black Americans in the US are not happy that he is calling out Israel as an apartheid state. He was on CBS this morning, ladies and gentlemen. You got to see this. The guy who confronts him, shout out to Willie Quinn, the guy who confronts him, Tony Duckapil, he is the one that I think a lot of people, really were like, why are you coming after this man? Right. So he was the one sent in to be the attack dog against Ta-Nehisi Coates. Oh, let me scroll up. Sorry, I went to the wrong part. He was the one sent in to be that person. And similar to the way that Angela Rye was sent in to be the attack dog on The Breakfast Club against Jill Stein. So they sent in Tony to go against Ta-Nehisi Coates. Let's go ahead and bring him in.
Conflict, and there's so many quote unquote issues.
Ta-Nehisi, I want to dive into the Israel-Palestine section of the book. It's the largest section of the book. And I have to say, when I read the book, I imagine if I took your name out of it, took away the awards and the acclaim, took the cover off the book, the publishing house goes away, the content of that section would not be out of place in the backpack of an extremist. And so then I found myself wondering, why does Ta-Nehisi Coates, who I've known for a long time, read his work for a long time.
1 second, guys. Sorry, it froze up a little bit. Give me just a second. I'm just going to reboot that. I don't know why it. Okay, there we go. Give me just a second and we should be able to bring that back in. Or I could just bring it over here. I don't know why that particular video. Sometimes the Twitter videos are incredibly slow. Let me see. I'll just come over here. I think I can bring it up over here, so hold on. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Oh, nope, that's the wrong one. Let me go back. Sorry, guys. This is what happens when Eric's not here, like helping me with this. It's a little bit. There we go. Okay, I got it over here. All right, here we go. Sorry about that. Let me try it this way. I don't know what's going on with tight VNC. So here we go. And hopefully you guys can hear this okay. Let's put it here. Bam. There we go.
Conflict, and there's so many quote unquote issues to be dealt with.
Ta-Nehisi, I want to dive into the Israel-Palestine section of the book. It's the largest section of the book. And I have to say, when I read the book, I imagine if I took your name out of it, took away the awards and the acclaim, took the cover off the book, the publishing house goes away, the content of that section would not be out of place in the backpack of an extremist. And so then I found myself wondering, why does Ta-Nehisi Coates, who I've known for a long time, read his work for a long time, very talented, smart guy, leave out so much? Why leave out that Israel is surrounded by countries that want to eliminate it? Why leave out that Israel deals with terror groups that want to eliminate it? Why not detail anything of the first and the second intifada, the cafe bombings, the bus bombings, the little kids blown to bits? And is it because you just don't believe that Israel in any condition has a right to exist?
So does everybody see what is happening here? Right? So now you have this guy who was brought in, you know, he's a part of CBS Mornings. They sick him in on Ta-Nehisi Coates. And I think that Ta-Nehisi Coates' response is just perfect. Because see, what's different about this particular issue when you compare it to the Breakfast Club where Angela Rye was attacking Jill Stein, now you have a white man attacking a black man for not wanting to kiss up to Israel, for criticizing Israel. So listen to what he says.
Well, I would say the perspective that you just outlined, there is no shortage of that perspective in American media. That's the first thing I would say. I am most concerned always with those who don't have a voice, with those who don't have the ability to talk. I have asked repeatedly in my interviews whether there is a single network, mainstream organization in America with a Palestinian American bureau chief or correspondent who actually has a voice to articulate their part of the world. I've been a reporter for 20 years. The reporters of those who believe more sympathetically about Israel and its right to exist don't have a problem getting their voice out. But what I saw in Palestine, what I saw on the West Bank, what I saw in Haifa in Israel, what I saw in the South Hebron Hills, those were the stories that I have not heard. And those were the stories that I was most occupied with. I wrote a 260-page book. It is not a treatise on the entirety of the conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis.
But if you were to read this book, you would be left wondering, why does any of Israel exist? What a horrific place committing horrific acts on a daily basis. So I think the question is, it seems like to me what he's saying to Ta-Nehisi Coates is, you shouldn't have written it. You shouldn't have put that information in there about Israel because we don't want people to have a bad opinion about Israel. So he wants Ta-Nehisi Coates to sugarcoat this image of Israel so that people don't know what Israel really is, so that people don't understand the creation of the state of Israel, so that people don't know that Israel is an apartheid state. He wants people to think that Israel is just this place for a group of people to be safe, That's all they want you to talk about. And I'm going to tell you a little something about Tony. I'm going to tell you why Tony's saying what he's saying. Okay. So hold on to that. Follow me here. question is central and key. If Israel has a right to exist, and if your answer is no, then I guess the question becomes, why do the Palestinians have a right to exist? Why do 20 different Muslim countries have a right to exist?
My answer is that no country in this world establishes its ability to exist through rights. Countries establish their ability to exist through force, as America did. And so I think this question of right to Israel does exist. It's a fact. The question of its right is not a question that I would be faced with any other country.
But you write a book that delegitimizes the pillars of Israel. It seems like an effort to topple the whole building of it. So I come back to the question, and it's what I struggle with throughout this book. What is it that so particularly offends you about the existence of a Jewish state that is a Jewish safe place and not any of the other states out there?
Listen to the framing. Notice the way he framed the question. He's basically saying to Ta-Nehisi, why would you be offended about a place that is there to keep Jewish people safe? That is what he is saying to Ta-Nehisi. Do you see how they frame it in such a way to make it look like you're an awful person? If you criticize Israel, the next thing you know, they start pointing fingers at you, calling you anti-Semitic. Anything is anti-Semitic now. If you follow me down this road, you'll see where I'm talking about here. But listen to what Ta-Nehisi says, because I think this is so incredibly important. Why are you pointing your finger at a black man, asking him about him critiquing a ethno-supremacist apartheid state? And Ta-Nehisi really brings that home.
There's nothing that offends me about a Jewish state. I am offended by the idea of states built on ethnocracy, no matter where they are.
Muslim included.
I would not want a state where any group of people lay down their citizenship rights based on ethnicity. The country of Israel is a state in which half the population exists on one tier of citizenship, and everybody else that's ruled by Israelis exists on another tier, including Palestinian Israeli citizens. The only people that exist on that first tier are Israeli Jews. Why do we support that? Why is that okay? I'm the child of Jim Crow. I'm the child of people that were born into a country where that was exactly the case, of American apartheid. I walk over there and I walk through the occupied territories and I walk down the street in Hebron. And a guy says to me, I can't walk down the street unless I profess my religion.
Pause. He is a child of Jim Crow. So you see, this is why another time, an ambush that did not work out well. How can you say to a black man who is an American descendant of slavery, how can you talk to him about having the audacity of criticizing an apartheid state? Do you know how many of us have our relatives, my grandparents, went through Jim Crow? My grandparents went through Jim Crow. My parents went through segregation. I was the first person in my family to go to an integrated school. This wasn't that long ago. And I feel like sometimes there's this need to play the oppression Olympics, because this really wasn't that long ago. Now, this white man named Tony is sitting there and he is telling, Ta-Nehisi, basically, he wants Ta-Nehisi to see that Israel was more oppressed than he was. And I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, Ta-Nehisi is like, let me tell you where I come from and where my people come from and what we have been through. Not just Jim Crow, not just slavery, redlining, housing discrimination, which still continues today. So Tony tried to flip it to make it seem like Ta-Nehisi is attacking Jewish people. Ta-Nehisi is attacking the state of Israel, the government, the laws, and the apartheid. And some of the same people who were against apartheid South Africa are for apartheid in Israel. That's your Kamala Harris. That's your Joe Biden. That's a lot of the Democrats, a lot of the black Democrats who were against apartheid in South Africa have no problem with apartheid in Israel. Don't you think that's a little bit strange? Don't you think that sounds like some people have been brainwashed? Don't you think some of these people sold out? Especially the politicians. Let him continue.
I'm with another path. No. I want to. This is very, very important.
So you see what happens here, right? So Gail and old dude over in the other chair, the other two black people, you got two other black people here. They try to interrupt him. So instead of defending, and Gail, we got a bones to pick with you, because Gail King, instead of defending Ta-Nehisi, who you should be pointing towards as your brother alike, you jump in to try to defend Israel. What is up with that? Let me let it finish, and I'm gonna tell you something.
Apartheid. I walk over there and I walk through the occupied territories and I walk down the street in Hebron, and a guy says to me, I can't walk down the street unless I profess my religion. I'm with another path. No. I want to. This is very, very important.
See how they jumped in once he said religion? Well, Gail want to keep that job. Gail want to continue to get that check. These are some of the people that you can point to that I said before. They cannot continue to represent us. They cannot continue to represent us. I would never. This is why you don't see me sitting there. This is why you don't see me in Gail's seat. This is why you don't see Breonna Joy Gray in Gail's seat. This is why you don't see us there. Because we weren't willing to sell out to the networks, to the studios. And that's fine. You guys can point fingers at me. You can point fingers at me and say, oh, Sabby lives in a white state. Oh, Sabby is married to a white person. Oh, Sabby, da-da-da. Sabby has never, ever, ever went against my people. And I have never, ever, ever stood up to defend a apartheid ethno-supremacist state against anyone else. You would never see me do it. These people fooling you, man. These people tricking you. Sunday live stream. We're going to get into the Diddy escalation with Jaguar Wright and her appearance on Piers Morgan, because I'm trying to tell you guys, wake up. Some of these people are not what you think they are. You think that because you see Oprah with Stedman and you say, well, Oprah's with the black man and that's a black couple, that these are good people. These are not good people. These people are not doing good things. And you can add Gail to that list as well. Kamala Harris, they put her in front of you to cosplay. This woman is fooling you. These people are not good people. She locked up all these black men. And then you have Ta-Nehisi Coates, who actually had his opinion changed by this. And he gave a shout out to Rania Khalek for waking him up to what was happening to the Palestinian people. So I give him credit for that he was willing to say, okay, let me go do my research. And that's what he did. So the other two black people who are supposed to technically, you would think, would understand what he's coming from when he brings up apartheid. You guys love Ta-Nehisi Coates when he was talking about black racism in this country. But the moment he starts criticizing Israel, it's, oh no, God, what are you doing? Oh, I don't know who got a muzzle on these people, but some of these people should be ashamed of themselves. Gail and that other dude sitting next to you on the couch. You guys should be ashamed of yourself. I hope the check is good, hon. I hope the money is good. Richie Torres, I hope the money is good for you. I hope the money is good for all of you who sit up there and play this damn game. You are a disgrace. You are a shame. And you wonder why. Corporate media ratings are continuing to decline, because people can see through the bullshit. These are the people they put in front of you and tell you this is what you should be like. You should be like Gail. You should be like Oprah. I know. They told me too. They told me you should be like Oprah. That's what you should strive to be like. These are not good people. And Ta-Nehisi Coates, through all his stuff, he's not perfect, but when it was brought to his attention that he was wrong about this issue, he took it upon himself to go do the research and educate himself. And you can't be mad at him for that.
It is extremely important.
Yeah, let me lay it down.
I'm working with the person that is guiding me is a Palestinian whose father, whose grandfather and grandmother was born in this town. And I have more freedom to walk than he does. He can't ride on certain roads. He can't get water in the same way that Israeli citizens who live less than a mile away from him can.
And why is that okay? Why is that? Why is there no agency in this book for the Palestinians? They exist in your narrative merely as victims of the Israelis, as though they were not offered peace at any juncture, as though they don't have a stake in this as well.
This is the other talking point we got to push back on, okay? Because just because you were offered a state, which, by the way, they weren't offered a true state and they were never offered the right to return. So just because there were offerings that were made to you and you did not pursue it, that does not give Israel the right to beat you, shoot you, kill you, sexually assault you, occupy you, and oppress you. Because that's what I'm hearing on the other side. Because you did not accept what we offered to you, it's Israel's right to do what they're doing to you. That's coming from Tony.
is their role in the lack of a Palestinian
I have a very, 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 very moral compass about this. And again, perhaps it's because of my ancestry. Either apartheid is right or it's wrong. It's really, really simple. Either what I saw was right or it's wrong. I am, for instance, against the death penalty. What the person did to get the death penalty, it really doesn't matter to me. I don't care if they were selling a nickel bag of marijuana or if they were a serial killer. I am against the death penalty. I am against a state that discriminates against people on the basis of ethnicity. I'm against that. There is nothing the Palestinians could do that would make that okay for me. My book is not based on the hyper-morality
What's the last
of the
message you
Palestinian
want
people.
In lessons, because many people feel it's complicated. You say it's not complicated. Less than 20 seconds. What's your message?
Many people don't feel this complicated. That's the talking point that you have to repeat, Gail, so that you can keep that damn job. Many people, especially those that have been out in the streets, we know what exactly is going on. We've been paying attention. We've been following this story. So stop it with the it's complicated. They kill me with that. Seriously. So Ta-Nehisi's point, either you're against apartheid or you're not. You can't say I'm against apartheid, but only when a certain country does it. This is insane. This is insane. This is insane. Too many people have been brainwashed and too many people have taken money from the Israeli lobby. So even they know what they're doing is wrong, but they're not going to fight back against it because they want to keep that donor money flowing. That's how it works. And he finishes here.
Less than 20 seconds. I want people to read the book.
Yeah.
And I don't make the assumption that somebody would just read the book and have read nothing else about Israel and Palestine.
You're still invited to High Holidays. I'll see you at the show.
Conflict.
So Tony, y'all see Tony? Okay, let's pull up Tony because I'm gonna show you something about the tone. Tony has a little bit of information I think you need to know about him, why he was so passionate about this issue. And yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, we're using Wikipedia. It is what it is. Look, Tony Dukabill, whatever. Listen to this. In 2014, hold on. In 2014, he announced that he converted to Judaism. Okay, whatever. Big deal. This is the part I think you need to pay attention to, though. Tony's two older children are living in Israel with their mother, his ex-wife. So Tony has a stake in this because his family lives there in Israel. Tony want to make sure that everything for him going to be okay. We still going to be cool. I got family there. Now, Ta-Nehisi Coates also was speaking at the Apollo. Ta-Nehisi Coates speaking last night at Uncommitted's campaign at the Democratic National Convention. So again, this was him here. Let me see if I can get this up for you.
So I'm saying all this legacy, you know what I'm saying? We're talking about Fannie Lou Hamer, right? You know, his redemption of Fannie Lou Hamer and Shirley Chisholm and, you know, Jesse's first run. And then I'm like, right, but who's not on stage? Who's been pushed out the frame? And I'm hearing all this talk about, you know, a woman's right to choose and protecting the autonomy of women's bodies, and yet I see on stage some of the very people who have put that autonomy in question. And look, I understand politics.
So the point that he's making here, which I think is important, at the Democratic National Convention, they brought all these different people on the stage to speak, but they refused to let one Palestinian American give their speech on the stage, which the speech at the end endorsed Kamala Harris. Now, this girl is a Democrat. She's a Democrat politician in Georgia. She's in the Georgia State House, and they wouldn't let her. It was already vetted, and they wouldn't let her go up on the stage, but they let Israeli family members speak on the stage. So what he's pointing out is that they allowed Republicans who are against a woman's right to choose to come up on the stage and speak, but they would not let a Palestinian American speak on the stage. And I don't know how much more clear I can make it for people, folks. But see, Tony from CBS this morning, Tony don't want you to talk about that. Tony don't want you to feel like Palestinians are victimized. Tony just wants you to keep it moving and paint Israel as a good place.
Like, I get it. You know what I mean? I understand that, I'm a writer. I am not running for election, but we got to be clear about this, though. We have to be clear about this. I'm outside that night, and I'm looking up, on stage a couple of nights later, and I'm out with these, uncommitted, folks whose only request was for a Palestinian American Democrat to be allowed to address the DNC. And I look up, and this is so important to say here, and I see the Central Park 5, up on the screen. This is not an attack on them. I got to be absolutely clear about this, right? I'm very, very happy for those brothers. But what I know is when they were going through their stuff, the Democratic Party wanted nothing to do with them. Right. They were dehumanized. They were pushed out of the frame, and I'm standing with people who have been pushed out the frame. You know what I mean? And I'm with people whose families are being bombed literally right now. Right now. And it's like, one of the great tragedies of being in Israel and going to Yad Vashem and being, so incredibly moved is this feeling of what does never again really mean?
Mm-hmm.
Does it truly mean never again? And that's a question for us too, right? All of this pride and all of this, feeling that we feel, we are to hold folks accountable. I don't believe that you get to take Shirley Chisholm. I don't believe you get to take Fannie Lou Hamer and then bankroll those bombs to be dropped on people.
Yeah, that's an excellent point there from him, that you shouldn't have it that way. You can't mention Fannie Lou Hamer and then be okay with those bombs dropping on Palestinian people. And I think that's just incredibly important. 1 second here. Oh, how am I? Okay, I'm sorry, guys. I'm terrible without Eric. Somehow I ended up sharing something twice. Anyway, something else I wanted to show you here as well. This is what I think Ta-Nehisi is pointing out. This type of behavior right here. Now, this isn't Israel. This is right here in the United States. Look at this.
It's because of your traitor. Go to Gaza, go! They want you in Gaza. Why you don't go to Gaza? Why you don't go to Gaza? Why you don't go? Why you don't go to Gaza? We are the best people in the world. You are not people. You are Amalek. You are Amalek.
The world is outraged against what you're doing.
Why you don't go to Gaza? Why you don't go to Gaza? Go to Gaza. Go to Gaza.
Did everyone catch what he said? So these are two Jewish men. They're both Jewish. No, one is, Hasidic Jewish, but these are two Jewish men. Did you hear what he said to him? He said, "We are the superior people." He called him Amalek. We all know what this means. What the hell is happening? This is what Ta-Nehisi Coates is referring to. This is what he's talking about. The supremacy. Now, that's not in Israel. That's right here in the U.S. Right here in the United States of America. And I want to show you something else, too. I don't know if everybody saw this. Look at this. This is from Brookings Institute. Brookings has just declared prejudice towards Muslim is highest among all religious and ethnic groups. August 27th, 2024. Prejudice towards Muslims is highest among all religious and ethnic groups. What is Tony talking about? What is he talking about? I think we all need to seriously take a deep breath and cross our fingers for Ta-Nehisi. because I give it time. He was on Jon Stewart's show. He was on CBS this morning. Those are the two I saw so far. So he's probably going to be on a book tour for his book. Give it amount of time before people start pointing fingers at him and start calling him anti-Semitic. Give it time for him telling history. Let's go to the comments over here. What's up, Wasim? Thank you. Don't forget about Rumble Rants. I am going to try. I don't have Eric with me tonight, so I'm sorry. I don't have producer tonight. Sorry, but I'll try. We'll see. Things are a little bit weird on my end. Skylar, okay, since dude wants to go there, let's talk about the Battle of Tentura, the systemic sexual violence against Palestinians since 1948, etc. He don't want to play that game. No. Thanks, Cameron. What happened to Jill Stein speaking for the National Reparations Summit? She wasn't a speaker for the summit, not that I know of. But I believe, from what I understand, it seemed like there was already an event that she was going to be at in person in Houston, Texas. That's what I've seen so far. Again, I don't work with the campaign, but I do know that she wasn't a speaker for the summit. I understand she was invited, but from what I know, it seems like she already had an event booked this weekend. Thank you, Bruno. Much love, Sabby. God bless, and thanks for the truths. Thank you, Wasim. The third guy was a former NFL player. He is not a real journalist and sold out. Okay. Thank you, Wasim. Thank you, Peter. The other two Black people on that panel only care about the color green. Also, they are classist. Also, did South Africa have agency in their apartheid? Good point. And thank you, Samantha. All this money for Israel and Ukraine, yet FEMA is out of money for the rest of hurricane season. Yeah, they out of money, all right. Thank you, Wasim. Oh, and shout out to Samantha for being a member for 1 month. And her cute little pug. Is that a pug? He kind of looks like a pug. Thank you again for this one, Wasim. Funny, Tony did not disclose that in that interview. Maybe his kids are in the IDF. And that's what I was thinking. Because, he didn't disclose it. I just did a little bit of searching myself and said, let me see. Thank you, Roger. Katie Turk is Jewish and moved to Israel, ? Let me double check. He's been married more than once. No. That he married Katie in 2017. He has 2 children from a previous relationship. So he has an ex, or it doesn't say that him and Katie broke up. So I'm assuming that must be the previous wife there. Yeah. Okay. The Oracle says, and I wonder if Tony made his connection to Israel and his conversation known in full disclosure so that his potential bias be made known. Probably not. Probably not. That's a good point. Thank you, Dissel. Ta-Nehisi had to make a statement on this because his brand would be at stake if he didn't. He'll probably vote Democrat in November. Yeah, that's a sad thing. I can try to see if I can get him to come on, you guys. I don't know. Maybe I can talk him out of that. Wink, wink. All right, guys, if you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button. Thank you very much. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, or share. And we're moving on to our final story, ladies and gentlemen. Lowkey, and Piers Morgan. Lowkey and Piers Morgan, and no, not the Lowkey from Avengers. Not the Lowkey from Thor. Lowkey, who's an activist, also a rapper, appeared on Piers Morgan, and they had quite a heated discussion here. And I love the fact that Lowkey really called out Piers Morgan. Like I told you guys about Piers. They had a particular heated discussion here. Let's go ahead and dive right in, folks. Piers versus Lowkey. Round 1.
Your feeling about where we are now with this war, and indeed the widening conflict with Israel apparently planning a ground incursion into Lebanon?
Well, that initial interview, there were 3 things that I stated which have since come clearly to fruition. So the first thing that I stated was that Mark Regev belongs in The Hague. Israel is currently in the ICJ charged with genocide. I also said that what Israel was doing in Gaza in an accumulative way over decades would amount with the military operation that they were about to launch to genocide. And the third thing that I said, which has also now been proven to have been the case, is that the Israeli military unfortunately implemented the Hannibal Directive on October 7th. And that, just so viewers are aware, is when Israel, of course, it was initially developed in Lebanon while trying to suppress the Lebanese population and stop them from battling the Israeli occupation. And it's whereby Israel takes measures to kill the captives who are Israeli that have been taken by the other side. Now, that happened on October 7th, and it's since been proven in 3 different cases. It happened, unfortunately, after...
It's been denied by Israel, to be clear.
It hasn't, though. It's been denied by certain upper echelons of the Israeli political establishment, but there have been key figures within the Air Force that have acknowledged that this has taken place. It's also been revealed by the Al Jazeera investigation, and other places too have gone very deep into it.
But you wouldn't say that the absolute vast majority of people killed and wounded on October the 7th were indeed killed and wounded by Hamas, because apart from anything else, Hamas were boasting about it and filming it as they were doing it.
I think actually the majority of people that were killed on October 7th and off the back of the October 7th were the Palestinian fighters that entered into what is considered to be Israel.
But we know
because they were killed, they were run over by cars, their bodies were dismembered. There's footage that came out of them being killed.
You feel sorry for the Hamas terrorists
No,
that
I'm
came in?
stating objective facts as a journalist that has researched this topic.
But what about the 1,200 people who they murdered and the 7,000 they wounded?
No. Hundreds of those people were killed when Israel implemented the Hannibal Directive.
That's simply not.
See, this is the part that the Gray Zone had talked about this, Electric Intifada had talked about this, and this is the part that people like Piers Morgan don't want to admit. So you also have to take into consideration that some of the people that were at that festival were also IDF soldiers. So remember, in Israel, it's required that you serve as part of the IDF. So this is another part that's not mentioned. Now, this is not to say that Hamas did not commit violence that day. They did kill people that day. There is evidence that shows that. However, I still disagree with that 1,200 number when you look at all the other pieces that are put together. So when they say that they killed 1,200 civilians, some of those people at the festival were not civilians. They were IDF soldiers. And that's what people have to take into consideration. So there's that. Lowkey brought up a good point, which is that some of the people that were killed were the fighters that came into Israel. So some of those people were also killed in this fight. Let's continue.
True. It simply is true.
It isn't.
And I encourage you, in the spirit of journalistic inquiry and curiosity, to really look that up.
It's already been thoroughly investigated.
It absolutely has not.
But it
been.
has, Lowkey.
It's been investigated by Al Jazeera. It's been investigated by trustable news sources that have found this to be the case.
No, it's not true that hundreds of people in those named casualty numbers on the Israeli side
were killed by Israel.
Killed by Israel.
No, it's a fact. It's a documented fact. It's a documented fact. And you know what else? If you were to study those cars which were put forth as evidence that Hamas had killed those people fleeing the Nova Festival, the order came directly from the Israeli Air Force. This is a mass Hannibal. This is a dead zone. No cars will pass.
Did you watch the documentary? Did you watch the documentary last week on BBC Two?
No.
About the music festival, right? You literally see Hamas fighters with their GoPros going from car to car, murdering people.
That happened. Yeah, that happened.
Why are you trying to diminish the scale of what was going on?
So that's the other thing too that I think like people like Pierce don't understand. I don't think anyone who's a part of the pro-Palestine movement is rejecting that. I don't think anyone's saying, no, they did not kill anybody at all. I think what I've heard from most people is that there's evidence that shows that basically when you talk, remember they kept changing the number from 1,400 to 1,200. When you're talking about like that 1,200, what they are saying is that there is evidence that shows that Israel also implemented the Hannibal Directive, which they admitted to. They had finally admitted to after people said it last year and were smeared for saying it. And which means that they killed some of their own people. Now, why would they do that? That is done to prevent capture, so that they would implement a Hannibal Directive to kill some of their own so that they would not be captured. So that was confirmed in Haaretz. Israel was finally admitting that. They didn't admit it last year when other independent journalists had called that out. So what Piers gets wrong is when he pokes at people and says, but do you condemn Hamas? Do you condemn Hamas? Do you condemn? What he gets wrong is he thinks that all of us are saying that they didn't kill anybody. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that, number one, they didn't kill everybody. Number two, some of the people were killed by the IDF, which they finally admitted after all these months. And number three, not all of those people were civilians. Some of them were IDF soldiers. But Piers likes to take it to the other extreme and say, oh, you guys said nothing happened.
Said that happened. That doesn't equate to diminishing what you've just stated.
It doesn't say hundreds.
You're diminishing Apache helicopters bombing cars that contained civilians. You're diminishing all of the Israeli captives that have been killed by Israeli airstrikes. Israeli captives have come out of Gaza and said very clearly that actually they were scared of being killed by Israeli airstrikes.
Why are there hostages at all?
Well, this is, of course, an issue of 70 years of occupation, of dispossession, of ethnic cleansing.
You wouldn't support the taking of
genocide,
hostages, including Holocaust survivors and babies. You wouldn't support that.
I wouldn't take hostages, no.
So should they hand them back?
I think if you look historically at where the return of actual hostages has happened, you look at the case of Gilad Shalit, this was a case where an Israeli soldier was given back in exchange for the release of Palestinian prisoners. What you've actually seen in this case is a massive increase of Palestinian prisoners who are being tortured. There's been examples of rape within Israeli military camps. The rapists have come out and become celebrities within Israeli society. 68% of the Israeli population say they oppose the prosecuting of people that have been implicated in rape within the dungeon system. And if you really look at it, Israel has far more chance of returning hostages by negotiating for their release than by airstriking them. What Israel has done as part of this campaign is airstrike and kill its own captives. The captives.
How would you have responded on October the 8th if you were running the Israeli government?
Ultimately,
the biggest terror attack on your people ever.
Ultimately, it is within the interests of everybody, especially those who identify as Israelis currently, to end Zionism. Zionism has dispossessed and disempowered and killed people on an industrial scale. Its maintenance requires 4 generations of Palestinian refugees scattered throughout the Middle East, the highest population of refugees there is in the world. Its maintenance requires the constant repression of Palestinian hopes for a better world.
Which I think is completely wrong. So I believe all Palestinian people should have exactly the same rights as you and I and every Israeli.
And that requires the end of Zionism. So therefore you support the end of Zionism.
Well, I don't agree with what has clearly been a form of occupation, okay? But putting that to one side, I also don't agree with Hamas, Hezbollah and the Houthis, funded by Iran, armed by Iran, launching wave after wave after years and decades of terror attacks on Israel.
Do they have air forces? Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question.
Let me ask some questions.
Do they have air forces and air defenses?
Let me ask.
Do they have air forces and air defenses?
So it sounds like you're defending what they do.
No, I'm saying there is a complete difference between one of the most powerful armies in the world, which has literally a key unit within the Israeli military, Unit 9900, is the visual unit which uses satellites in the sky that can pick off a bit of chewing gum on your shoe, okay? You're talking about actors that are shooting rockets which do not have precise targeting against one of the most powerful air forces in the world.
It sounds to me,
F-15s, F-16s, and F-35s.
Lowkey.
You're talking about asymmetrical warfare. But you know the thing that Israel doesn't remember, and which Israel has to know and must know, that winning a war is not about killing on an industrial scale the weakest among the population you are targeting, which Israel excels at, which is the essence of Zionism. Winning a war is about the largest amount of people being convinced of your viewpoint. If we use that metric to understand this war, Israel has lost in Gaza and it will lose in Lebanon because Israel has more enemies around the world than ever before. More people are critical of Zionism than ever before. More people understand it to be essentially an anti-life ideology, which is causing mass human suffering.
But Lowkey, at the same time, Hamas, Hezbollah are wedded, and make no secret of being wedded, to the destruction of Israel. The destruction. That is a nihilistic form of genocide. The very genocide that its supporters, like you, would say is being waged against their people.
So do you see what Piers is doing? So now Piers Morgan is pointing towards Hamas and Hezbollah and saying that they want the destruction of Israel, but not pointing fingers at Israel that is actually doing the destruction. It is the state of Israel that is actually killing people in Gaza and in Lebanon and Syria, and it's the state of Israel that has been the aggressor. It is the state of Israel that has occupied land in Gaza, that has occupied land in the West Bank, that has occupied land in Lebanon. It is Israel that has done those things. I mean, last time I checked, I don't see Gaza occupying Israel. So this is what I've said before about the people, and particularly the commentators that are pro-Israel or try to pretend like they're not, but they really are pro-Israel. They want you to believe that what happened on October 7th in Israel, that is the greatest tragedy in the world, while you turn a blind eye to a genocide that has been occurring since October 7th. They want you to feel more pity for the Israelis than they do for the Palestinians and for now the Lebanese and the Syrians and everybody else that Israel's tried to occupy and control. That is a colonizer mindset.
People, they are explicit. We want the destruction of Israel. And they have tried to enact this on October the 7th. And Hezbollah's response the next day, within hours, was to unleash rockets on Israel as well and to carry on doing it for a year. At some point, Israel obviously was going to respond with massive force to the biggest attack on its people. Obviously, they were going to do that. Hamas knew they would do that. Iran, who were funding it, knew they were going to do that. Hezbollah knew they would do that. Hezbollah knew if they kept rattling the Israel cage with their rockets, that they would get a response of the kind we're seeing now. What they underestimated is that Israel would be quite as successful as they're being right now with Hezbollah and taking out all its command leadership. And you can...
Hezbollah just killed 8 IDF soldiers. So I think this interview may have been recorded prior to when that happened. But again, you cannot sit up here and point out just Hezbollah sending, trying to send rockets towards Israel without pointing out the fact that without the occupation, Hezbollah doesn't exist. Without Israel occupying that part of Lebanon, there is no Hezbollah. There is no Hamas. So Piers wants to start after occupation. Everybody notice this? That Piers Morgan wants to start post-occupation?
Feel that the momentum has switched now, where Israeli people in particular and all the polling are now beginning to go back to supporting Netanyahu because they believe, rightly or wrongly, but they believe Hamas and Hezbollah when they say we want to destroy Israel. They believe it, and they believe that they have to defend themselves. Do you understand that?
I have a response. The Likud platform, which is its charter, states very clearly, there will be no Palestinian sovereignty between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. The Likud charter calls for the complete obliteration of Palestine and all of the rights of Palestinians. That is the core of the issue. One group that you're talking about don't have air defenses and do not have an air force, and are internationally isolated.
As you know,
and are internationally isolated.
And yet they were
the
somehow,
other one
and yet
has
they,
the support of the United States, which has over around 1,000 military bases around the world, and of course all of the largesse from literally the US after Israel has taken its terrorist actions, which the former head of the CIA, Leon Panetta, called it a form of terrorism in Lebanon with the pager attack. Right after that, the US has said it's going to give $8.7 billion in military aid to Israel.
Was what Hamas did on October the 7th an act of terrorism then?
I would say that
before Lowkey responds to that question, I just want to say, I want you guys to notice something that Piers Morgan did there. When Lowkey pointed out what the Likud charter says about the destruction of Palestine, notice Piers Morgan doesn't respond to that. Notice he doesn't say anything about that. Now, the number of times I've seen him on this show point out what the old Hamas charter says, but when someone presents to him what the Likud party, which is the present party right now, and their present current charter says about the destruction of Palestine, Piers Morgan has nothing to say. Why is that? I'm going to show you in just a second. I told you guys about Piers Morgan.
The killing by the Israeli Air Force of Israeli citizens was an act of terror. I would say that Palestinians who have lived in camps for several generations, they're not in our shoes. They're not living the kind of lives that we live in the places
but you haven't
that
answered
we
my
live.
question.
But I'm answering your question. To a Palestinian who has suffered their entire life under the boot of Israeli occupation, what you view as justified will not be what they view as justified.
Well, I asked you what
the
you
very
think.
same way,
Asked you what you
the
think.
very same way that you denounce figures and define them depending to these particular legislatory definitions. Throughout history, the very same people.
I understand.
You compared yourself to Nelson Mandela.
I understand.
The ANC were absolutely treated in exactly the
British
same
government
way.
called
The
them terrorists.
FLN
I
were
know.
treated in exactly the same
I
way.
know.
The
But
Vietnamese
you're
were
missing
treated
my
in
point.
exactly
You're missing
the
my
same
point.
way.
Okay.
I'm speaking directly to your point.
You're not,
in
though.
fact,
You're not answering my question.
William Cuffey of the Chartists, these were people that mobilized for hundreds of years
I know
to
my
get
history
the
like you
right
do.
to vote, to get the right to vote, that didn't own property and were not landed gentry in this
I
country.
hear you.
Do you know what happened to them? They were imprisoned as terrorists.
Okay.
They were massacred at the
I know the same
at Manchester.
I know the same history you do, but I simply asked you, given that you categorize what Israel did to Hezbollah with the pages, whether you said it was an act of terror, whether you think what Hamas did to Israelis on October 7th was an act of terror.
As I said to you then, the picture is not clear of what exactly Hamas
come
did
on,
to
Lowkey.
Israelis. There were lies about 40 beheaded babies
So
that
your
were pumped
response-
out all over the place.
Yeah.
No. There was so much fake news and lies on what happened on October 7th. How can we actually say...
Have you watched the Hamas footage that they took themselves?
Seen bits and pieces.
Bits and pieces?
Yeah.
Literally bits and pieces of people's bodies?
No.
No?
What
Really?
I don't understand...
You haven't seen it,
What
have
I
you?
don't understand...
Why
what
don't
I
you
don't
want to see
understand-
it?
I'm happy to see it, but what I don't understand, no, as in I would like to see these things, but what I'm saying to you, that you are seeming to minimize, in my opinion, is the fact that the Hannibal Directive was implemented. If the Hannibal
So,
Directive
July
was
20
implemented, if
I'm
a
about
fake
to read you
news
something.
campaign was
I'm about
rolled
to read
out...
you something.
Read.
A July 2024 Harrods investigation revealed the IDF ordered the Hannibal Directive to be used, adding, Harrods does not know whether or how many civilians and soldiers were hit due to these procedures, but the cumulative data indicates that many of the kidnapped people were at risk exposed to Israeli gunfire, even if they weren't the target. In other words, there may well have been a directive issued, says Harrods, but nobody knows whether anyone was even hit or killed.
Look at the cars. Look at the cars fleeing the Nova Festival.
I've watched the video footage of what Hamas did to people in the cars. But here's my point, Lowkey.
You watched the video footage that was given to you by pro-Israel accounts. You watched the video footage that fits that narrative. And this is something that Lowkey's going to point out. I want to pull up this clip here. Because it's true. We need to talk about why people have these narratives that they have. And I always told you, follow the money and look at who's funding these people. And I want you to see who was funding Piers Morgan. Let me get this up here on the screen as well. Just going to go to this part right here.
You condemn Rupert Murdoch.
What's it got to do with me?
Do you condemn Rupert Murdoch?
I'm not talking about Rupert
Murdoch.
Murdoch.
Do you condemn Rupert Murdoch?
I'm not talking about Rupert Murdoch.
This has never been shown on British media. This is a letter from Netanyahu's political office. And Bridget may well recognize the handwriting of Benjamin Netanyahu here. It is a list of individuals that Netanyahu considered to be funders of his political campaign. There is a name on this list. The name is Rupert Murdoch. Your employer.
You know what, Lowkey?
It seems he funded Benjamin Netanyahu.
You know
That's
what?
an issue.
You know what, Lowkey? It's not an issue for me.
It's an issue,
Nobody
and actually it's in the interest of objectivity
understand one thing.
that you state it.
Rupert Murdoch can speak for himself. I've got a problem with him. Take it up with him.
I do.
I can tell you categorically, he has never had a single conversation with me about anything I've put on Piers Morgan Uncensored.
Sam kindly resigned from the Times newspaper because of Murdoch's investments and bias
If
towards
you have a
Israel.
problem,
This document, this letter,
you're a rapper,
clearly
right?
shows Benjamin Netanyahu noting Rupert Murdoch, considering him to be a funder of his political campaign.
So I'm going to pause here for a second. I told you guys about the connection between Piers Morgan and Rupert Murdoch. Yes, Rupert Murdoch was his boss. Yes, even when Piers Morgan left Talk TV and decided to focus solely mainly on Piers Morgan Uncensored, there was still information which I presented on the show that showed that he was still connected to Rupert Murdoch financially, because even Uncensored is supposed to be a subsidiary of one of Rupert Murdoch's projects. So I told you guys about that. What I did not know that Rupert Murdoch donated to Benjamin Netanyahu's campaign. So this is a problem, fam. Because when you think about all of the shows on Talk TV, when they talk about this issue, and they all have the pro-Israel perspective. Now, Piers ain't with them no more. He went on to Piers Uncensored, but still, he has the same perspective. So don't tell me there's not a conflict of interest. There is a conflict of interest. So I didn't know Lowkey was going to show up with the letter, but you know.
You're a rapper, yeah?
That's an issue.
You're a rapper. You condemn P. Diddy.
Yes.
Great. You see how easy it is? You take it out of your obsession, which is that you hate Israel so much you can't condemn anything that people do to them.
We see the situation differently.
Not really.
My loyalty is to the people.
I agree with you a lot more. I agree with you a lot more than you realise.
I view myself as loyal to the people of the camps, to the people under the bombs. I do not view myself as loyal to somebody that would end up on a list of potential funders of Benjamin Netanyahu.
And you should have seen that. You did see. You saw the look on Piers Morgan's face when he pulled out that list and said, "Look who donated to Benjamin Netanyahu." Oh, what do you know, Rupert Murdoch? You saw the look on Piers's face, like, "Oh, buddy, oh, buddy." Crazy stuff, fam. Crazy stuff. Make sure you follow Lowkey on Twitter. You can also find Lowkey on Breakthrough News sometimes as well. Quick updates for the rest of this week. Tomorrow, which is Friday evening, I will not be live. I have other plans Friday and Saturday, so I have other things that I'm doing. So I'm not going to be live Friday night. I am recording an interview with Ronnie Akalik, so you can expect to see that to premiere on Saturday. And Sunday, I will be back live on Sunday. So the Sunday live streams are coming back. I've just been busy, had a lot going on. But yeah, just letting you guys know that I will not be live tomorrow night because I do have things planned. So it is what it is. Based. Okay. And we just have one ballot measure. I do want to go through Massachusetts. There's only 4 ballot measures for Massachusetts. So let's go ahead and put this bad boy up on the screen. Again, ballot measures. If you don't want to support the presidential campaign and you live in a ballot measure state, please still go vote for those ballot measures. I keep telling people, don't sit at home. You really need to support this. It will affect you directly. So we're going through all the BI states, and now we are on Massachusetts. And Massachusetts, I'm going to sum this up for you. Massachusetts is an indirect initiative state. What that means is that, can I make this bigger? Oh, I guess not really. Oh, there we go. What that means is that in Massachusetts, if a successful petition drive makes a stop at the Massachusetts General Court, aka the Massachusetts Legislature, for ratification or approval, it means that once this is presented to the legislature, proposals for amendments and proposals for statutes face distinct requirements. So indirect initiative is different from California. People ask me, why does California have so many questions on the ballot and a state like Massachusetts will only have 4? California is direct initiative. That means they collect the number of signatures that they need for the ballot question, and it goes directly on the ballot. In Massachusetts, it's not that easy. We get the signature requirements, but then it has to go through the legislature for approval. And once the legislator approves it, then it is on the ballot. So that's why we don't have as many. But that being said, we have passed some things through it. Like we legalized marijuana that way. A lot of people don't realize that, you know? So it just depends. But the direct initiative states it's a lot easier to get that on the ballot. So just keep that in mind. And here's something to note as well. It says amendments must be approved by 1/4 of the legislator in 2 joint sessions before proceeding to the ballot. However, if the amendment is rejected, then it never reaches the ballot for a vote. It just dies. So people have to understand that statutes may be adopted by the legislator by a majority vote in both houses. If statute is not adopted, proponents must collect another smaller round of signatures to place the statute on the ballot. So we also have the power to repeal legislation via veto referendum in Massachusetts. So interesting there, fam. The Massachusetts General Court can also place measures on the ballot as legislatively referred constitutional amendments. However, when a citizen proposed amendment is placed before the legislator by voters, lawmakers with a 3/4 supermajority vote called into joint session can amend the proposed amendment. So like I said, it's a little bit more difficult to get certain things on the ballot here, right? We do have that single subject rule, similar to a lot of other states. So, but it says here, Massachusetts law requires initiatives to concern only topics which are related or which are mutually dependent. The rule is a little bit less restrictive than the full single subject rule employed in many other states. So, measures may not propose laws regarding the following subjects: religion or religious institutions, judges, judicial decisions, or courts. That's important. Laws that apply to particular cities or towns, and laws that make specific appropriations. The 18th Amendment, which is the prohibition of alcohol, restricting rights found in the Declaration of Rights, and subject restriction or the modification of existing restriction. Let's go ahead and get into the measures here. So again, like I said, we only have 4. So let's go to the first one. This one is kind of basic. It makes sense to me. Massachusetts question 1, authorization of state auditor to audit general court initiative. I mean, this is a pretty easy one. And this is important here. It says, meaning that although it was initiated by the voters, it first went to the Massachusetts legislator to sign off on. So just keep in mind, again, in Massachusetts, the legislator has to approve it first before it can appear on the ballot. A yes vote supports explicitly authorizing the state auditor to audit the accounts, programs, activities, and functions of all departments, offices, commissions, institutions, and activities of the state legislator, any authorities or districts created by the state legislature. Who supports this? Diana DiZoglio. She's a Democrat. That's the state auditor. So I would assume the state auditor would support this. The Democratic Party of Massachusetts and the Massachusetts Fiscal Alliance. Here's one of the arguments. Certain legislative leaders who hold the keys to the books and the information we're seeking are twisting and manipulating the state constitution and the current statute. You don't say. Duh. This is an effort to make it crystal clear that the legislature is mandated to receive an audit. Since those leaders seem to be confused about what the law says, we're not doing anything that doesn't occur in every other state entity. Folks will have to wonder what they're hiding if they're not complying with an audit that every other state entity complies with. Yeah, I think this one's common sense, guys. Like it's like pretty common sense to me. It goes on to say here, campaign finance money that has been spent to support or oppose. No money has been spent to oppose this initiative, but it says that over 400,833 has been spent to support it. So it will probably most likely pass because they've spent a lot of money to support it and no money to oppose it. So again, for me, I'm just kind of like, I think that one's an easy one. Yeah, the state auditor should be able to audit. So just now, this one is interesting, especially if you have kids that are in high school. Massachusetts question 2, repeal competency assessment requirement for high school graduation initiative. Oh, honey. So this is standardized testing here in Massachusetts. It is known as the MCAS. So listen to this. I don't know how everybody feels about standardized testing. I'm not a big fan, but here we go. A yes vote supports repealing the requirement that students must achieve a certain competency level on the MCAS exam to graduate from high school. The initiative would require that students participate in the assessment program without achieving a certain competency level and complete all local or district graduation requirements, number of class credits, satisfactory grades, and regular attendance. If a student does not meet the minimum competency requirement when they take the MCAS in the 10th grade, the proposed state law would require them to retake the assessment again in the 11th or the 12th grade. The law would also allow any former Massachusetts high school student who was denied a diploma due to not meeting the competency, who was denied a diploma due to not meeting the competency requirements to request and receive a diploma if they had fulfilled all other local or district requirements. The initiative would also prohibit any sign of distinction on diplomas concerning how a student performed on the MCAS. So how does everybody feel about standardized testing? I've never really been a big fan of it. I will tell you one thing about the MCAS that you may not know of if you don't live here in Massachusetts. The MCAS, it used to be, and we'll see how far this goes, but some people have told me different stories from their experience. But it used to be if you achieved a certain score on the MCAS, then you can attend any public university in Massachusetts tuition free. Now, I've heard from other people that there are certain stipulations with that, and like there's certain schools that they kind of restrict you from. So I don't know. I didn't go to high school in Massachusetts, but that was one of the pros, I guess, that if you got that score, you could go to a public university here tuition free. But I've never really been a fan of standardized tests. I think they're a waste of time, to be honest with you. Who supports this? The Massachusetts AFL-CIO and the Massachusetts Teachers Association. So this is pretty big. Here's one of the arguments. Mass residents are ready to join the vast majority of states that have scrapped the use of standardized tests as a graduation requirement and instead use authentic educator-designed assessments of student skills. The MCAS will still be taken and is required by federal law, but it will be used for diagnostic purposes and not as a high-stakes test required for earning a diploma. And I agree with this. Again, like I said, one of the things used to drive me crazy, sometimes there are students that perform really well in the classroom, but when it came to those standardized tests, they struggled. And some people are just not good with standardized tests. And it would suck for someone to unfortunately, not be able to pass a course because they didn't get a certain score on a standardized test, even though they were performing well in that course throughout the year. And I've seen that happen to people, especially when I lived in North Carolina. I saw that happen. And to me, it just didn't make any sense. I'm like, you already were passing the class. Why do you have to pass the standardized test in order to graduate or in order to pass this class? I never really fully agreed with that. Who is against it? Well. Governor Maura Healey. Of course she is against it. And also the Massachusetts Secretary of Education, Patrick Tutwiler. Okay. Massachusetts Business Alliance for Education. So here's what they say. Importantly, we know from Brown University research that high school MCAS scores predict long-term success and appear to reflect student academic skills, not simply socioeconomic status or school characteristics. We can't eliminate gaps in achievement and equity if we strip ourselves of the tools to measure them. Instead of wasting time fighting for legislation that does away with the graduation standard, a true commitment to equity requires we focus squarely on helping all students meet it. Yeah, but you haven't done that in years. You haven't been doing that. That's part of the problem. What data will show you is that when it comes to standardized testing, particularly here in Massachusetts, you know who underperforms? Black students, low-income students, students of color, students that speak another language, students that are English language learners. They're more likely to struggle with those tests. The students who perform the best when it comes to those standardized tests in Massachusetts are white students. So if that is the case, Massachusetts Business Alliance for Education, you should have been doing the equity issue a long time ago, but you weren't doing that. You see what I mean? Get out of here, man. Get out of here. So I'm for like, whatever, get rid of it. Now, here's the problem. There is no money spent to support it, but there's over $973,000 spent to oppose it. Why not take that $973,000 and use that to fill that equity gap that you're talking about between the kids and the testing? You know, they kill me with this. They kill me with this, the way that they spend money in this state. That's the cash contributions. Oh, sorry. Total contributions to oppose it is over 1 million. Sorry about that, guys. And total contributions to support it is over 3.4 million. So that was going to be pretty close. We'll see what happens. I know how I'm voting. Let's go ahead to question number 3. This is a big one, guys. If you drive for Uber or Lyft, ride share, you're doing the damn thing. This one's going to be huge. This is question number 3. Unionization and collective bargaining for transportation network. Drivers Initiative. This is the one, fam. A yes vote supports providing for unionizing and collective bargaining for transportation network drivers. In short, this would allow rideshare drivers such as Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, etc., to unionize, to start a union. I don't know why they use the fancy language. I just made it easier for you. Requiring the state to oversee the negotiations between the parties and approve the negotiated recommendations on wages, benefits, and terms and conditions of work, and requiring collective bargaining agreements to be approved by at least a majority of riders who have completed at least 100 trips during the previous quarter. It will create a hearing process for Massachusetts Employment Relations Board to process unfair work practice charges against transportation network companies. The board would be authorized to award compensation to wronged parties if unfair work practices have been committed. Companies would be authorized to appeal the board's decision to the state appeal court. Yeah. Authorize a driver organization to be exclusive bargaining representative for all drivers after it has collected signatures from at least 25% of active drivers. The initiative would define active drivers as drivers who have completed more than the median number of rides in the past 6 months. The board would determine if the driver organization has collected the required number of signatures. If so, The designated driver organization would have the exclusive right to represent drivers in negotiations with companies and collect voluntary membership dues. Any collective bargaining agreement would have to be approved by at least a majority of riders who have completed at least 100 trips during their previous quarter and the Secretary of Labor. The agreement would be in effect for the following 3 years. So, ladies and gentlemen, do you support Uber drivers, Lyft drivers having the ability to start a union? So this is a big one. And here's the thing. If we pass this here in Massachusetts, this could also transfer to other states. Other states will be pushed. There will be pressure on Connecticut. There'll be pressure on New Hampshire. There will be pressure on other states within the region to say, I guess we better let them unionize here too, right? I think it's fair. Now, we'll tell you something I did notice, and I just want to be completely honest with you guys. Like now in Massachusetts, when you try to reserve an Uber, there is a surcharge now that says like the Massachusetts benefits charge, because it was agreed upon a couple of months ago that Uber and Lyft drivers would be able to qualify for sick pay and benefits here in Massachusetts. And the way that they went about doing that is by adding a little surcharge. So now if you request an Uber ride, you will see maybe a $2 surcharge. I'm fine with that. I'm like, whatever, give people their benefits and keep it moving. So that doesn't bother me, But I would love to see this happen for them to be able to form a union. Yes on 3 is leading the campaign in support of question 3. And I've already seen commercials for it. Who supports this? Jim McGovern, Ayanna Pressley, and Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Campbell. It's interesting. Andrea Campbell ran for mayor of Boston, too. She lost to Michelle Wu. Unions that supported Service Employees International Union and Service Employees International Union Local 32BJ, the Center for American Progress and Progressive Massachusetts. And here's one of the statements here. I want you to hear from one of the actual drivers. This is from Domingo. He said, during the pandemic, I was working 12-hour days every single day. At that time, we were making what we deserved. But after the pandemic is when we started to see the pay really decrease, despite that we had been providing a service the community needed. They just started lowering the pay. Waiting time became longer and unjust deactivations occurred more frequently. There was no consideration about the sacrifice we made to keep the service running. A union is the only thing that would give us a voice to be able to have some say in things that really directly affect us. So let's see that happen, guys. It would be great if this passes. I can't imagine someone voting against this. I can't imagine someone voting against people being able to unionize unless you're just a cold son of a bitch. I don't know, man. There has been over $4 million that has been spent to support this initiative and $0 to oppose. So let's see how that works out, ladies and gentlemen. And we have one more, and this is the fun one. Wait till we get to the fun one. Here's a note here from Roger, though. It wouldn't hurt to vote for it, but the initiative was to make it easier to form cooperatives, especially worker co-ops. I agree with Roger. Unions are a great step, but worker co-ops in the end is the ultimate goal. And I say worker co-ops in the end is the ultimate goal because, number one, as a worker co-op, you own part of the business. So I always say it's great to start with a union, but if you can, it's great to get to that worker co-op option, right? So I agree with Roger there. He goes on to say, I have a whole slew of them ready to go, right of first offer, formation of a state agency to help workers start worker co-ops by providing them with what they need from tax consultation, grant programs, research, etc., to help get them started. I have an initiative to mandate that a cooperative study curriculum be introduced at public universities, both municipal and state, as an alternative to the traditional business degrees like an MBA. I have an initiative that when the AGs revoke corporate charters to companies for egregious behavior, to issue out worker cooperative charters in their place. I trust this will pass, but if not, then the drivers should run with this because I doubt the unions would push for it. It's a good point. And now we get to the fun one, guys. Yeah. Here we get to the fun ones. Question 4. Legalization and regulation of psychedelic substances. Woo! Should we play the song? Should we play the song? I gotta play the music for this one. I don't have creepy music. I only have this one song. Guys, let's see. Let's go on. Katrina's psychedelics, fam. What is up? Let me see if this passes. Okay, let me see if this will pass. A yes vote supports this initiative too. This is where it gets a little weird. Create a natural Psychedelic Substances Commission and Advisory Board to regulate the licensing of psychedelic substances and services, including the administration of psychedelic substances to individuals 21 years of age or older under licensed supervision. So you have to be at least 21. So sorry for those of you that are like 18, 19, but they're pushing for 21 years of age. The part here that gets tricky here is under licensed supervision. So does that mean like in order for you to do this and like shroom out, does that mean that like you have to go to a certain facility and walk into the room and then there's like a chaperone who stands there by you while you do what you're doing? I don't know. Okay, so let's go. So I don't know. The Year Sailor Goon says, oh, so it's like a medical treatment. See, that's where I get confused because in Massachusetts, we kind of just jumped ahead when it came to marijuana. This state decriminalized marijuana and then we voted to legalize it as a ballot measure. So we didn't really go through the, okay, it has to be medical and then decriminalize. And then, you know, if that makes sense, I don't know. Anywho, let's continue. It also will authorize individuals 21 years of age or older to grow, possess, and use a personal amount of psychedelic substances. Okay. So then that means you can also grow it, possess it, and use it. So maybe everything doesn't have to be supervised. Let's continue. Miss Pamela said, what are you on tonight, Sabby? Nothing at all. Nothing. Just joy. Just joy. I just love it. I think we'll be the first state on the East Coast to pass this, right? Just like when we did with marijuana. Impose an excise tax rate of 15% on the sale of psychedelic substances at licensed administration facilities. So that's good for the state. Authorize localities to levy an additional tax of up to 2% on psychedelic substances and regulate the time, place, and manner of the operation of natural psychedelic substance licenses. And that's where I get a little bit confused again, because one part it said that you can grow it, possess it, and then another part says that it has to be in a, you need a license administration facility. So maybe it's both, right? Either way, I think people should be able to, do this if they want. Like, I'm not against people doing this. And check this out. Massachusetts for Mental Health Options is leading the campaign in support of the initiative. Mental Health Options. Who supports this? Dr. Bronner's Magic Soaps. You guys know Dr. Bronner? Dr. Bronner Soap. New Approach Advocacy Fund. And Emily Onashuk, who is from Massachusetts for Mental Health Options, Grassroots Outreach Director, and a U.S. Navy veteran. Plant-based therapeutics are the most effective treatment I have seen for veterans struggling with mental health challenges after service. So this is interesting. Let's go to opposition. So of course there is some opposition, right? So Chris Cohen, he said, we are not opposed, advocating against the medicinal properties of this, but this goes way too far too quickly and doesn't address any of the real concerns that public safety advocates have, as well as mental health professionals. Whatever. Be quiet, Chris. Anyway, I say, I'm just like, whatever, shoot. There is over $6 million spent to support it, and no money spent to oppose it. So it's probably going to pass. And if it passes, I believe we will be the only state on the East Coast that has legalized shroomies, And actually, it says psychedelics, so it's not just shrooms. And this is, wow. What is this? Sabby Sabs, there's actually indigenous churches here in Massachusetts that hold psychedelic ceremonies. Well, damn. Thank you for letting me know. Wow. So yeah, let's see if this works, guys. Oh, I forgot about the, this one's another one. So number 4, that was the fun. We have another one about minimum wage for tipped employees. And this is another one where this is the second state I've covered so far that has a minimum wage for tipped employees initiative. So peep this one out. A yes vote supports gradually increasing the wage of tipped employees until it meets the state minimum wage in 2029 and continues to permit tipping in addition to the minimum wage. Can we get a hell yeah? Can we get a hell yeah? Let's get it. Hey. Let's go. Do the rock away. All right. So this is a good one. This is a good one because the minimum wage here is already pretty, it's like we're 15. So listen, how would this change the way tip employees are paid in the state? Peep this, fam. January 1st of 2025, 64% of the state minimum wage. 2026, 73%. 2027, 82%. 2028, 91%. And 2029, by that year, you will receive 100% of the state minimum wage plus tips. And people can afford it because listen, let me tell you something. There's a lot of millionaires that live in this state, a lot. and they can afford it. They can still afford to tip you. You can be able to get the minimum wage and still get tipped as well. I always tip people, like, you know, so they can afford it, let them pay. So if you look at the number here, it says as of January 2024, the minimum wage for tipped employees in Massachusetts was $6.75 in addition to tips. And the minimum wage for non-tipped employees was $15. So imagine if you were making $15 an hour plus tips. So yeah, I say go for it, fam. Now, here's where the naysayers gonna come in. Sabby, what if the restaurants can't afford to pay them that? I would argue that most of them can. And again, like I said, this is a wealthy state. It's one of the wealthiest states in the country. I could understand if we were having this argument and I was in Arkansas, then I would probably agree with you. But Massachusetts is one of the wealthiest states in the country. They can afford it. So let's go on here. Our Fair Wage Plus Tips Massachusetts is leading that campaign. Who supports it? Patricia Jellin and Tricia Farley Bovair. And one of the arguments is that thousands of tip workers in Massachusetts are leaving the restaurant industry and are not willing to return without one fair wage. And nearly 250 Massachusetts employers are now paying one fair wage to recruit staff and seek a level playing field. The time to pass one fair wage is now. Yeah, because remember, some of these employees still had to work during the pandemic, even though we were locked down, because like the delivery drivers, the food delivery drivers, they were still delivering food. You just couldn't go inside of the restaurants and eat during that time, right? But people still had to cook the food. So just keep that in mind. Some of these people were still working because they were considered to be essential employees. Who's against it? The Massachusetts Restaurant Association. Now, here's one of their arguments here. They said if the ballot question passes, it's going to impact three tiers. It's going to impact the server themselves, who's going to make much less money. Will they? We don't know that. And isn't that up to the server to decide if they want to continue? If that happens and the server says they're making less money, they can always quit. Also goes on to say it's going to impact the restaurant owner, who's going to have higher costs upwards of $18,000 per tip employee to implement this. And it's going to have a higher cost for the consumer because there's going to be higher costs. Yeah, I don't buy this, fam. I think you're just being cheap, because it's not like they're increasing the minimum wage for tipped servers from $6.75 to $15 overnight. They're not. It's a gradual increase, just like when we got the $15 minimum wage. That was over the course of a number of years. So I think Steve is just trying to be cheap. Go home, Steve. In the words of Family Matters, go home, Steve. I'm silly tonight. There is over $950,000 spent to support it and over $1 million spent to oppose it. And that's it, fam. And yeah. So I would support, again, that's Massachusetts, ladies and gentlemen. So exciting things here for my state. We have quite a bit more states to go through. I think I'm going to Colorado next. We're going to cover that one next, but quite a bit. I don't know. I just kind of see it that way. I think we can get these things done, man. I think we can get these things done. Remember, Massachusetts, we passed the millionaire's tax. We passed the millionaire's tax in this state in 2022. And that's how we were able to give the kids free lunch and breakfast, right? So these things can be done. Like I said, there's a lot of people in the state that have a lot of money. I'm not one of them, but there are a lot of millionaires here. So just keep that in mind. And maybe I'm a little biased. I worked in the restaurant industry for years, so maybe I'm a little bit biased there because I know what it's like waiting tables, and sometimes you just don't get tips. By the way, when I waited tables, I was paid $2.13 an hour in the Carolinas, and still there would be tables that would not tip. Some people wouldn't tip. Some people didn't know that you weren't even making the minimum wage. Some people don't know that. So it is what it is. Amani goes, you better thank a union member for the pay raises and minimum wage increases. Bam. That is it for me tonight, guys. I know I did channel a little bit of Family Matters there, and I thought that was kind of cool. But I gotta end with this one. It's a classic. 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3. What the heck is bothering me? Have a good night. Oh my God. Keep up the fight. Oh no, I forgot the super chats. I'm sorry. Oh my God, I'm bad. I'm sorry. See what happens when I don't have a producer. Thank you, Wasim. Israel hit a weapons depot belonging to Russia in a Russian airbase in Syria. Now Russia ordered 1.5 million Russian Israelis to evacuate from Israel. Wow. I have to look into that. Thank you for this one as well. Also noticed CNN mentioned that Mossad HQ was an Iranian target and mentioned it located in civilian population in Tel Aviv and blamed Iran risking civilians, but not accusing Israel using human shields. Thank you for this as well. Israel made the UN Secretary General persona non grata and banned him from Israel on the basis the entire UN is a swamp of anti-Semitism, according to their FM. Interesting. Shout out to Lee for gifting 20 Sabby memberships. Thank you, Wasim, for this one. It's amazing Pierce invited a token Lebanese to spread her love of Israel, only for Lowkey to call her out and her org involvement in settlements. She did not answer him. Thank you, Sparky. Over half of Israelis killed on October 7th were killed by Israel. That was another thing that we were talking about. Thank you for this as well. Sparky says, go Yemen, fight the power. Thank you, Peter. Founded by Iran, Bibi admitted he funded them to come into power. This was said for one day on MSM, the WCK car attack. Yeah, buddy. Thank you, Jose. Now this is going to make me buy all of Lowkey's music. Thank you, Sparky. Funding for Hamas came from the US and Israel via Qatar, not from Iran. Thank you for this one as well. Love you, Sabby. Thank you. Love you as well. Thanks, Wasim. If Israel forces out every Arab for their Greater Israel project, they will head to the UK and Pierce will fear that Brits will be occupied. Interesting. Thank you, New York Varsity. All lives matter unless it's Israel. Gotta love these MFs. By the way, Mehdi, who is far from my favorite, tore Pierce a new one. Thank you, Sparky. After the 1-2 punch of Aaron Monte followed by Lowkey, Piers Morgan probably has PTSD. Thanks, Wasim. Israel doing a genocidal video in Gaza is no longer with us due to Hezbollah. Thank you. I think you meant Hezbollah or yeah. And thank you. Roger says rock fan. I can't put it. I'm sorry, Roger. I can't put it up on the screen. I'll try to figure it out for next time. And thank you, Sparky. The idea behind the American education system wasn't so much to educate as it was to produce compliant citizens while filtering out and diminishing ones who think for themselves. Thank you so much. Let's try this again. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.